Welcome to r/relationships, where OP's girlfriend is demanding to run a background check on him. Am I the jerk for not giving my girlfriend my social security number so she can run a background check on me? I'm 27 male, have been dating my girlfriend who's 31 for almost a year now, and tonight things got really weird. She sat me down all serious and said we had to talk. I figured it was going to be something about our relationship, or maybe something personal she had to share. But no, instead she hit me with, "I need your social security number." I just stared at her for a second, then I asked, "Why would you need that?" She didn't even hesitate and started explaining this whole backstory about her ex-boyfriend. Apparently, the guy had been living a double life. He had all these criminal charges that she didn't even know about and eventually exposed her to some super sketchy and dangerous situations. She only found out about the full extent of it after he cheated on her, which was the breaking point for her. So I told her, "Okay, that's awful, and I'm sorry you went through all of that. But what does that have to do with me or my social security number?" Then she dropped the bombshell. Ever since that relationship, she's had her friend who works for the federal government run background checks on her partners. She says it's the only way she feels safe, and that since we're getting serious, it's time for her to check my criminal history. Now, for the record, I have absolutely nothing to hide. I don't even have a parking ticket. My life is pretty boring. I work, go to school, hit the gym, play Dungeons & Dragons, and I watch anime. That's it. But handing over my social security number? Absolutely not. I told her flat out that I didn't feel comfortable sharing that. She did not take it well. She got upset and started saying I didn't understand what women go through and that this is about her safety. I told her she was right. There's no way I can fully understand what it's like to be a woman, but that doesn't mean I'm handing over sensitive information to someone I've never even met. She argued that her friend isn't a stranger to her. She said he's one of her best friends and married to her close friend. That's all well and good, but I still don't know the guy. I don't know who he's married to. He's not someone I know or trust. I told her, "Look, this is my personal information. If you want to trust him with your details, that's your call. But nobody I don't know is getting my social security number." Then she hit me with, "If you trust me, you should trust my judgment and friends." I told her I do trust her in general, but that trust doesn't mean I have to agree with everything she says or does. She doubled down and said our relationship can't progress unless I give her friend my social because she needs to feel safe. At that point, I stood up and said, "I respect your concerns, but your past trauma doesn't give you the right to pressure me into doing something I'm not comfortable with. I'm sorry, but I'm not giving out sensitive information to someone I don't know, federal government job or not." I used to work for the federal government myself, so I know firsthand that not everyone working there is some paragon of virtue. Most people are just normal, and some aren't. I'm not saying her friend is sketchy, but I have no reason to trust him, and her saying he's one of my best friends does not change that. She called me insensitive, said I was being dismissive of her fears, and hasn't spoken to me since. Honestly, I'm starting to feel like she was trying to manipulate me into giving her what she wanted. Am I wrong for thinking this whole thing is insane? Not the jerk. I'm a federal employee who has access to similar systems, and it is 100% against the law to use them for personal reasons. In fact, we have to try all other reasonable ways to find someone before using these systems. There is something sketchy going on there. Also, you don't need a social to do a background check. A name and address or a birthday are enough. Not the jerk. You don't even know if she's telling you the truth. She could be stealing your social for all you know. Run away. Clearly, she isn't willing to address her trust issues. She needs therapy. Assuming everyone is a criminal and you need proof otherwise is incredibly toxic. What should I do if my brother-in-law makes my family watch all 6 Rocky movies on Christmas and I can't take it anymore? My brother-in-law is a solid guy overall. He's got a successful small business, 2 awesome kids, and he treats my sister like a queen. Honestly, he's the type of person who's great to be around until Christmas gets here. That's when everything changes. Every year, without fail, we gather at my parents' house for Christmas. It's supposed to be a cozy, festive time with food, laughter, and maybe some cheesy holiday movies. But no. My brother-in-law hijacks the entire day with his bizarre obsession, the Rocky movies. He insists we watch the entire series, and I mean insists. Not as background noise while we mingle or play games, but as the main event. Everyone has to sit down and give these movies their full attention like it's some sacred ritual. It starts the moment we wake up. Before we've even had coffee, he's already got the first Rocky queued up. We open presents to the sound of Sylvester Stallone grunting his way through training montage. Then, as soon as Rocky wraps up, he's already pressing play on Rocky 2. By the time Rocky 3 starts, I'm usually fantasizing about faking a family emergency to escape. And don't even get me started on the volume. It's cranked so high, it feels like the boxing matches are happening in the living room. You can't even have a normal conversation without yelling over it. The worst part? He's relentless. If anyone dares to leave the room, whether it's to grab a snack, take a breather, or just escape the madness for 5 minutes, he follows us. He'll stand in the doorway, arms crossed, and guilt trip us about not respecting the family tradition. He acts like we're spitting on the holiday itself by not being fully engaged in his Rocky obsession. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't hate the movies. They're fine. But this isn't about whether or not Rocky is a good movie series. It's about the fact that my brother-in-law has decided his tradition should override everything else we want to do on Christmas. And honestly, none of us even agreed to this being a tradition in the first place. He just declared it once, and now we're all stuck with it. This year, though, I had had enough. And it turns out, so had the rest of my family. My parents, my brothers, and I were all secretly dreading the day as we watched him get the Blu-rays ready. Yes, he brings his own copies every year. But after Rocky 2 ended, we made a plan. We decided to quietly migrate to another room and start a game. Something fun, festive, and most importantly, away from the TV. When my brother-in-law noticed, he was furious. He stormed into the room and told us we were ruining Christmas by not participating in the tradition. My dad calmly told him, "Look, we're all here to spend time together. We just don't feel like watching movies all day." You'd think we had said that we hated his kids or something, the way he reacted. He huffed, grabbed his keys, and left without another word. My sister stayed though, which was a huge relief. She told us later that he had texted her saying that he was at home, continuing the Rocky marathon by himself. Honestly, the rest of the day was amazing. We put on Christmas music, played games, and we cooked dinner together. It felt like what Christmas is supposed to be, warm, joyful, and focused on the family. This whole ordeal has made me wonder why we let him hijack Christmas for so long. He's not a bad guy, but his obsession with these movies has made the holidays feel more like a chore than a celebration. Hopefully, this year was a turning point. If he wants to watch Rocky at home, fine by me, but I think it's time for the rest of us to take Christmas back. Why is your brother-in-law king of Christmas? Just say you don't want to watch the movies or put something else on. Maybe communicate that you hate this tradition and would rather gouge out your own eyes than watch one more pixel of Sylvester Stallone. Today I messed up by destroying a 15-year marriage. About 10 months ago, I'm 21 female, adopted a dog. As any dog owner knows, you tend to see the same people around your neighborhood when you're out walking your dog. One guy, around 40 or so, had this obscure breed of dog, and my dog really liked playing with one of his dogs, so we'd chat casually whenever we crossed paths. At first, it seemed totally normal, just friendly small talk about dogs and the weather. But over time, it started to feel off. He never said anything outright, but there were these small red flags that made me uncomfortable. For example, he seemed a little too interested in what I was doing when I wasn't at the park. At one point, he asked for my number, saying, "We should set up playdates for the dogs." Since it seemed innocent enough, I gave it to him. Later that day, I got a random text from him asking, "So, what are you up to?" That caught me off guard because I had assumed he wanted my number strictly for coordinating dog stuff. I ignored the message and started avoiding him at the park. After that, I only ran into him twice and made sure to keep my distance both times. Fast forward to today. I was walking my dog at the park and noticed a lady with some kids and a puppy of the same obscure breed. At first, I was cautious, worried that the guy might be lurking somewhere nearby, but then I realized her dog was smaller. It was clearly a puppy. My dog ran over to play, so I started talking to her. We were making small talk about her puppy, and I casually mentioned that I'd met a guy at the park who owned two of the same breed. I said I avoided him because he had made me uncomfortable and I felt like he was trying to hit on me. And that's when it happened. She froze for a second and asked, "What does he look like?" I described him and her face turned pale. She goes, "That's my husband." Turns out the puppy was a new addition to their family and her husband was at the kiddie park nearby with their other kid. She asked me if I had proof of anything, so I showed her the text he had sent me months ago. Her face went from pale to furious and she immediately called him over. Here's where it gets even more awkward. She asked for my phone, dialed his number, and someone else picked up, his nephew. I'm not sure if he gave his old phone to his nephew or if the nephew just answered because it was lying around, but the number was saved in my phone under her husband's name along with his dog's names. She absolutely lost it, yelling and demanding answers. I have no idea what was said after that because I got out of there as fast as I could. Later, she called me from her phone. Guess she must have grabbed my number from her husband's phone and asked for more details. I gave her everything I could remember, but made it clear I did not want to get dragged into their drama. She mentioned that the message he sent was right around their 15th wedding anniversary, which just made the whole thing even worse. For the record, I feel awful about the situation. I don't want to be responsible for breaking up a family with 3 kids who have been together that long. But at the same time, none of this is my fault. Oh, and just to clarify, since people kept asking, I'm a woman. Some folks assumed I was a guy, which gave this story a whole different vibe, I guess. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that a pregnancy announcement doesn't count as a Christmas present? Every year, my family gets together for Christmas at this fancy vacation spot we've been going to since I was a kid. It's a great tradition, and I genuinely look forward to it because it's one of the few times everyone gets together without any drama. One of the staples of this tradition is our Secret Santa gift exchange. It's for anyone over 18, and it's honestly the best way to keep gift-giving manageable since there are so many of us. The rules are simple. Gifts should be handmade or cost between $50 to $100. That way, no one feels like they're getting shortchanged. This year, my younger sister Heather, who's 24, had my name. I was pretty excited because Heather and I usually have a good sibling vibe, and she's pretty thoughtful when it comes to gifts. I was expecting something cool, maybe the DVD box set of my favorite show, which I had casually mentioned in a conversation a couple of months back. So when I opened the gift and I saw the box set packaging, I was pumped. But when I opened the case, there was no DVD inside. Instead, there was a positive pregnancy test. At first, I was kind of stunned, but I tried to recover quickly. I congratulated her, and the whole family started clapping and cheering. It's a big day, I get it. I was genuinely happy for her. But after the initial excitement, I asked her about the DVDs. I figured she might have just kept them aside or had another gift planned. That's when things got weird. Heather rolled her eyes and said the pregnancy was my gift. She explained that it wasn't just my present, but also the family's present. Like the announcement itself was supposed to count as her contribution. I laughed a little awkwardly, thinking she was joking, but no, she was serious. I told her again that I was thrilled for her, but I didn't think the announcement of her pregnancy really counted as a Secret Santa gift. She got defensive fast. She said I was being selfish and ungrateful and that I should just be happy about the new baby. Meanwhile, I was sitting there thinking about how I'd put actual effort into the gift I got from my Secret Santa. It was a custom leather wallet for my brother-in-law, which he loved, by the way. I wasn't trying to be rude, but I really felt like she used the whole family announcement as a way to skip the effort of getting me an actual present. To make things even more awkward, Heather is not married. Her boyfriend, who most of us aren't super fond of, wasn't even there for the announcement. My parents, of course, were over the moon and immediately started talking about baby names and shower plans. I, on the other hand, was stuck in this weird limbo. On one side, I felt like a jerk for caring about a gift when this was obviously a huge moment for her. On the other side, the whole situation just felt off. Like it wasn't a handmade gift or something thoughtful for me. It was literally a pregnancy test wrapped in DVD packaging. For context, Heather's gift from our aunt was a $100 spa gift card to her favorite place, so it's not like we're throwing random knickknacks around. The Secret Santa gifts are supposed to be decent. I guess that's what made me feel even more annoyed. Everyone else put thought and effort into their gifts, and Heather's gift to me was pretty much her pregnancy announcement. When I tried to explain how I felt, my parents told me to stop being petty and to just be happy about the new baby. My mom even said, "You're getting a niece or nephew in a few months. How is that not the best gift ever?" I didn't have the energy to explain why a baby 6 months down the line isn't exactly what I was expecting for Christmas this year. Now I'm stuck wondering if I'm the jerk here. Maybe I should just let it go and be happy for her. But at the same time, it feels like she skipped out on the whole point of Secret Santa. I'm curious how everyone else would feel in this situation. Am I overthinking it? Is a baby announcement supposed to count as a Christmas present now? Congratulations! You just won free babysitting duties for the next 14 to 16 years. As part of this exciting gift, you get to help feed the baby, change the baby, take care of the baby when she needs to go to the spa. Not the jerk, but you know what to do for her baby shower. A box for a buggy and adverts for baby clothes. Am I the jerk for getting alimony ended when my ex moved in with her boyfriend? So I, 41 male, have a 12-year-old son with my ex-wife who's 37. We divorced 5 years ago, and I've always tried to stay involved in my son's life. I pay child support and, until recently, alimony. My ex lives in our old house with my son and her nephew, who she took in shortly after our divorce. Her nephew is 10 now. The house has 3 bedrooms, so everyone seemed to have their own space. A little under 2 years ago, my ex started dating this guy. Fast forward to now, and she's about 4 months pregnant with his kid. Not long after finding out she was pregnant, he moved in with her. The thing is, he also has a daughter from a previous relationship, and when she moved in, they gave her my son's room. Now my son has to share a room with his cousin. To say my son is not happy about this is an understatement. He's upset, and I get why. He went from having his own space to suddenly being crammed in with his cousin, while this new girl who just showed up gets her own room. My son asked if he could come live with me full-time, and honestly, I've wanted that since the divorce. But I never pushed for it because he never seemed interested, and I didn't want to force him into something he wasn't ready for. So I called up my lawyer to start the process of getting full custody. While talking with my lawyer, I mentioned that my ex's boyfriend had moved in, and she's pregnant. Turns out, in my state, if your ex is living with a romantic partner, you can terminate alimony. My previous lawyer had told me it was only possible if she got remarried, so this was news to me. I told my lawyer to go ahead and file to end alimony too. The court ruled in my favor, and the alimony is done. As for custody, that process is taking longer, and it won't be resolved until after the holidays. My ex is absolutely furious about the alimony being cut. She's only working part-time, and her boyfriend is a medically retired firefighter, so their income is tight. But honestly, I feel like that money is better spent on my son's future. I could put it into savings for him, or use it for expenses that directly benefit him. Now my ex is saying that I'm punishing her for moving on and starting a new family. She's venting to anyone who will listen about how unfair this all is. I can see how this whole situation might look from the outside, but I feel like I'm just doing what's right for my kid. My son deserves a stable environment and his own space, not to be shuffled around because of her decisions. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. There's a big difference between child support and alimony, spousal support. The alimony is to help keep your spouse in the lifestyle they were used to, but is typically not forever. Now that she's with her new guy, it shouldn't be your responsibility to pay for her lifestyle any longer. It's not your problem that he doesn't or can't work. Best wishes for success in the custody changes. Not the jerk. Alimony shouldn't be a thing anyway. Nobody should be required to support any adult that they are not legally married to. If you're about to get full custody, she should be paying child support to you. I want to divorce my husband because he wants to spend all Sundays at his parents'. My husband, who's 42, and I, female 33, have been together for 5 years, married for 3. We have 1 toddler, and overall things are okay. But here's the thing. He insists on spending 1 day a week, or sometimes even sleeping over, at his parents' house in his old room. This started before we were even married. Back then it was, I'm just taking advantage of my last months as an unmarried man. Okay, fine. I figured it was temporary and didn't make a big deal out of it. Then after we got married, it turned into, since you don't need me right now, I'll be here if you get pregnant or when we have a kid. Again, I thought, sure, if he wants to hold on to some old nostalgia before we take on bigger responsibilities, whatever. When I was pregnant, he promised, once the baby is here, I won't leave. That sounded great, but after the baby came, it shifted to, once the baby is older and misses me, I won't go anymore. Now, fast forward to today, and we have a toddler who literally calls for him all the time, and yet he's still disappearing to his parents' house every week. The thing is, I miss him too. We both work, and weekends are when we're supposed to catch up on life, errands, chores, and family time. Sundays used to be our time to relax, have a slow breakfast, play with our toddler, and maybe watch a movie together. But no, he rushes off to relax somewhere else because apparently he needs time for himself. I'm over it. We fought about this so many times, and I just can't keep doing it. To me, it feels like he sees being at home as some kind of job he needs a break from. Like being here with me and our kid is a burden. It's like his real home is still with his parents, and I'm just holding him hostage here. And honestly, I hate that he even wants to go. What really gets to me is that his parents aren't even the ones pushing for this. They're not telling him to come over. In fact, they're not even at their house this weekend. This is all him. When I bring it up, he says I'm being controlling. He's told me flat out, you already have me 6 days a week. That comment hurt more than I expected. It made me feel like I'm some kind of boss who gets to clock his time, or like our home is a workplace he gets to leave behind. I'm at the point where I'm seriously considering ending things. I don't want to live like this anymore. Constantly feeling like I'm not enough, or that our family isn't enough. My toddler and I deserve someone who actually wants to be here. Am I being unreasonable here? Is there a way to fix this? Because I honestly don't know how much longer I can keep pretending this is okay. Not the jerk. My ex used to insist on seeing his family every weekend for 8+ hours a day. There were times we spent 11 hours there. Eventually, I put a stop to it and limited the visits to once a month. He did not take it well and started finding other ways to escape his responsibilities as a father and a husband. He switched to golfing, racing, karting, whatever he could to avoid being at home. It got worse. He'd go out for 12 hours even after I'd had 6 surgeries, when my eardrum ruptured, and when our kids were sick. It reached the point where he didn't even show up for our daughter's surgery. Where do you think your husband is going to stop? Because I never expected mine to turn into such a jerk, but it happened. We're divorcing for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one, in my opinion, is that he never put me or our kids first, and he still doesn't. You need to have a conversation with your husband and ask him when he plans to stop putting himself first all the time. I'm so much happier divorcing my high-conflict ex than I ever was dealing with his unsupportive behavior. Guy is getting villainized for spending 1 day a week with his parents. Roommate's crazy girlfriend tries to control my diet. I feel like this is entirely ridiculous. I live with my roommate, Matt. We used to be pretty close friends, but over the last 2 years of living with him, we've drifted apart, and I'm just waiting for our lease to end to move out on my own. Matt's girlfriend, Sarah, pretty much lives with us now, despite not paying rent. I won't lie, she annoys me to no end. She's an entitled airhead who thinks the world revolves around her. Anyway, Sarah has a condition where she gets nauseous at the slightest smell and sight of certain foods. She's an incredibly picky eater, and anything outside of corn dogs and chicken tenders makes her nauseous, according to her. Well, unfortunately for her, I like to cook. I love heavily spiced foods and love to cook Asian-style dishes. So living with a toddler who can't stand the smell really sucks. Sarah has always complained about me cooking smelly foods and has asked me to stop or do it when she's not home. Well, considering she doesn't pay rent and spends 18 hours a day at my home, I have not accommodated her at all. Last night, Sarah and Matt sat me down and told me I need to stop cooking because Sarah cannot stand it anymore. Apparently, she had a mental breakdown last week when I was cooking curry. She claims I'm making our apartment a hostile environment by ignoring her concerns. I told both of them to buzz off until Sarah starts paying her share of the rent. Matt said that because he lives here, his opinion matters as well, and he wants me to stop. I told him no to that as well, because he's only doing this because Sarah is being a baby. We ended up having a massive argument, and neither of them is talking to me. Both of them are staying at Sarah's mom's house right now. I say good riddance. At least I did, until I told the story to my coworkers, and they're all shocked. They say I'm being a complete jerk. This has given me second thoughts on if I was the jerk in the fight that we had. Not the jerk. You told both of them to buzz off until Sarah starts paying her share of the rent? This is exactly what you should have said. They can find things to do outside of the house as she does not even live there. Have you talked to your landlord about the extra tenant? Did you get a choice when she moved in? Or was it like, I guess she's just staying here from now on, without a word? Either way, I would tell them I'm going to continue to cook my own food, and if you have a problem with that, I'll bring it up to the landlord that you, roommate, brought your girlfriend in to live with us, and she doesn't pay rent. And seriously, if the cooking bothers her, she can leave to go to another room and light a candle or burn some incense. I'm a picky eater, and I love the smell of different types of cooking styles. For example, I love the smell of mushrooms, garlic, and onion being sautéed, but could never eat it because, ew, mushrooms. It sounds like he moved her in, and they're trying to force you out before your agreement is done so they can have the place to themselves. Not the jerk. Edit. I had another thought. Her condition. Is she one of those rare people who have a higher sensitivity to scent and needs a basically sterilized room, otherwise she's sick all the time? Or is she pregnant and they aren't telling you? Because I was turned off by scents and seen certain foods when I was pregnant. Who do you think is the jerk? OP or their roommate and his girlfriend? Please let us know. The guys who date the Karens and make excuses for them are just as bad as the Karens themselves. Am I the jerk for leaving when my fiance introduced me as a bookkeeper? I, female 45, have a fiance, male 55, who is a retired military officer. I own a successful company I started 7 years ago and have a small staff of 25. I worked my way through college, paying as I went. Therefore, I graduated in my early 30s with a double major in accounting and business management. I'm very proud of that. For a little background, I worked hard for my degrees and I have zero debt. I know it took me longer than the typical student going full-time to college after high school. I worked full-time to pay as I took classes. I went to junior college first, then finished at a 4-year. I took 2 classes per semester for a long time, but I finally made it. I've been teased that junior college isn't the same as going 4 years to a major university. Well, I'm proud to have done both and feel the education I received at junior college was excellent. I worked as an accountant for some large corporations as well as programming and IT. I started my company doing similar support to large and small companies alike. I have a wonderful staff. I manage the contracts, kickoff meetings, sales and consulting staff. I also do some of the consulting and most of the sales and contracts. My sister is my office manager, and I'm blessed in so many ways to have her. I was dating my now fiance before I started my company, and we recently got engaged. Everything seemed to be perfect, except he keeps introducing me as a bookkeeper. No disrespect intended to them or the profession. My issue is that I've worked hard to get to where I am. I'm an accountant, graduate with a double major, and a successful business owner. He could pick almost any other title to introduce me as, but he chooses bookkeeper. I've asked him many times in private to stop calling me a bookkeeper, as it implies to my clients and business associates that he doesn't respect me or what I have accomplished. He said he doesn't see the big deal or the difference and continues to do so. I recently pulled him aside and asked him to just introduce me as a consultant at the event we were going to. While there, we were talking to a prospective client for my company, and he says, "She's come a long way for a bookkeeper." I know my face had a fall blush at that, excused myself, and walked away. We had both driven there, so I got in my car and went home. We both have our own townhomes. I sent him a text to let him know that I was leaving and I would talk to him later. He thinks I'm overreacting. My family thinks he's a controlling jerk that doesn't respect me, but not sure what to think now. He seems so supportive when we are together, but not when we are around other people. He tends to treat me like a subordinate, nice kid, playing with the adults. He does talk down to me in front of my family, but I always assumed he was joking badly. So, am I the jerk for leaving and overreacting? Not the jerk. This man is military. He understands what titles are and why they matter, and he's doing this on purpose. ETA, your family thinks he's a controlling jerk that doesn't respect you? If you love and respect the opinions of your family in other circumstances, and you trust them to have your best interests at heart, then you should always listen when they say things like this to you. In the end, you get to make your own choices, but when you have a loving family, the chances of them saying this without meaning it are really slim. The people who love us can see what we can't, and they want what's best for us. She's come a long way for a bookkeeper? That is what's called a backhanded compliment. It sounds nice enough if you don't think about it, but its whole purpose is to knock you down a peg and make sure you don't believe in yourself more than you believe in him. You're definitely not the jerk. You've attempted healthy communication multiple times, and he continues to refer to you in a way that's belittling and disrespectful of all that you've accomplished. He can no longer play the clueless card. You've made it very clear how this is affecting you. I think your family is right. I actually do work here, but probably not how you think. Context: I work in a hospital. I also have a baby face and I'm short. On any given day, I can be mistaken for a high school student playing dress up, so I don't really begrudge people for mistaking me for a volunteer, unless you're mean. It's a weekend and I'm scheduled to work 28 hours. In my hospital, our staff are pretty distinctive. Nurses wear white, surgical staff wear blue, and techs and other staff wear black. I'm wearing the baggy surgical scrubs to be as comfortable as possible. I'm rushing around trying to see my patients and stop by to say hi to a few nurses I recognize. We chat a little and one asks me where I'm going. I mention the patient room and they give each other looks. Bad sign number 1. Before looking at me and assuring they'd check in. Bad sign number 2. I thank them, then I dip into the patient room. Me: "Hi." Patient, visibly irritated: "About time you came in here. I'm done with my food." Me: "Okay, do you want me to clear that tray for you?" Patient looks at me like a jerk. "Well, I'm done with it, aren't I?" Alrighty then, grumpy guy, whatever, it happens. I go to move the tray and I notice his wife sitting in a chair by his bed. She's looking apologetic to me and moves to take the tray, but I wave her off and settle into the side. Me: "Hi, I'm Patient. I need to go to the bathroom." Me: "Okay, I can come back if you'd like." Patient, again looking at me like I'm a jerk: "I need to go to the bathroom." Me: "Sir, you're welcome to use the restroom. I can come back when you're done." Patient: "This place is ridiculous. You aren't even going to help me. I'm out of major surgery, and you can't help me up to go to the bathroom. Me, pulling out my patient list more for show than anything else because I have it memorized. This jerk had finger surgery in his non-dominant hand. He has one completely unwrapped hand and his legs work fine. According to my records, sir, you passed your physical therapy yesterday and have unlimited ability to get in and out of bed and move on your own. However, I also can provide a urinal for you if you'd like. Patient starts yelling, "This is ridiculous. I just had major surgery. I'm in pain. You want me to just lie down in pain? You should be helping me." At this point, I see a few nurses duck their head in to check on me, but I wave them off. This dude needs an ego check. Me, "Sir, if you want assistance with your meals, we will provide it, but we will not tolerate being talked to like this." Patient, "I'm not listening to some nurse tell me what to do. You do what your job is." Patient's wife, "She's not a nurse." Patient, "I don't care what she is. I'm not listening to any of this. I don't ever want to see you again." Me, "Just to confirm, sir, you said that you don't want to see me?" Patient, "Did I stutter? I said go away. I want a new nurse." At this point, his nurse steps into the room with hospital security, the kind who are built like NFL linebackers, respond to psych issues, and have handcuffs. Nurse, "Doctor, I called security out of concern for staff safety." Security officer, "Are you okay, and do you require assistance?" Me, "No, but I would like you two to witness for me that the patient would no longer require our services, and pain management will sign off now per patient insistence. I'll alert his surgery team." Nurse and security officer nods. Nurse makes a note in her papers. Patient is now visibly buffering as he's processing. Patient, loading, probably like at 50%. "Wait, doctor? With pain management?" Me, "Yes, I'm the pain management doctor. Your team wanted me to see you to assess your post-operative pain, but I understand that we are not needed. I'll let your team know." Patient, anger downloaded. "You could have told me that. You're leaving? I want a new pain doctor." Me, smiling serenely. "Sir, it's the weekend. I'm the only pain management doctor. And as the two other witnesses have noted, you have fired me from your area. Good day." I go off on my merry way as this guy starts going ballistic. It's not standard for the pain service to be asked to see a hand surgery, but I did it as a favor to the orthopedic surgeon since the patient is, quoting the surgeon, a little jerk about his pain. I asked the nurse to let me know what happens when the patient realized I'm the only one in the whole hospital who can write for high doses that he keeps demanding. Update. Boss told me to deep clean the back and to not come to the front for any reason, so I did. Friday rolled around after I came back from the small vacation I had. The location had no service. I greeted some of the servers that I'm cool with, and they all gave me an "oh crap" look, since apparently my boss had been trying to call me to come in to open and close on Wednesday and Thursday. Obviously, I didn't know this since I had no service where I had been at the time. I make my way to the boss, expecting to get a freak out from him, which surprisingly he didn't have. He welcomed me back and asked a couple common questions about my trip. After 5 minutes of talking, he springs on me. "Since you didn't come in on Wednesday and Thursday, you need to come in Monday and Tuesday of next week." To which I replied, "Did you schedule me for those days?" And he immediately replies with, "No, but I know you have nothing better to do since you're just a teen." At this point, my face just looked like I had seen a bear riding a bicycle while juggling bowling pins. I was absolutely amazed at how those words came out of his mouth with such ease, like he really believed he had any sort of power over me. I paused for a moment and said, "No, I don't think I'll be doing that since I'm not currently scheduled on those days. I will not show up on those days." He then tried to argue that he had to come in on his days off to cover my shifts. I learned from the servers that he never showed up. The last thing I said to him before I started working was, "This isn't my problem. Hire more people," and I walked off. Saturday, the 11th. Today was looking like it was going to be pretty mundane. Busy floor, a lot of food needing to be run, tables that need to be put back together. Pretty usual tasks for the job until my boss showed up and started barking orders even though the restaurant was very packed and we needed all hands on deck. But obviously, that's not what he wanted. He could care less if the restaurant went to the toilet. All he cared about was being in control. The boss tells me and a server to go clean the storage closet, and if we don't, we can just be cut. We both reluctantly go and do it since he had 4 tables to attend to, and I wanted to help him so he wouldn't get bad tips just because a man-child wants to give tasks that can be done later and lay it out on the table for us to see. Super Bowl Sunday, the 12th, was supposed to be a really slow day since we don't have any TVs on the walls and we don't serve bar food. But as soon as church got out, we were super slammed to the point you couldn't even see the front door, and it stayed like that until 3 p.m., and I was just ready to leave. So I clocked out on time as you would at any other job, and my boss saw that and said, "Are you not being a team player right now? You're just going to abandon the ship like that?" To which I reply, "Well, yeah, you only have me for the time scheduled, not for when it's convenient for you. I have no problem working over the time I'm scheduled for, but I just can't with his snarky remarks and annoying temper tantrums that he has on the daily. I'm just very done with him, so why would I go above and beyond for him? Plus, it was the Super Bowl, and of course, I had plans. I wanted to hang out with my friends and not work." Thursday, the 16th. I received an email from the new place I'm going to be working at, and I got the job. The new job will be paying me $16 an hour, double what I've been making. I also start Monday. I had gone to work the same day and told my boss, I will not be able to put my 2 weeks in. However, I will work through this Sunday, and that will be my last day working for you. I hope that's enough time for you, so you can find my replacement, and if this doesn't work for you, I can always make my last day be today, since Texas doesn't require employees and employers to submit a 2-week resignation. He starts to freak out since Monday through Thursday of next week, the restaurant has a bunch of large reservations. He replies with, "If you stay with us, I can give you a big raise for all of your hard work." My eyebrows raise since there's no way that this raise will match my new employer's rate. Intrigued, I ask, "How much were you thinking of giving me?" Drum roll, clears throat. "I can give you a 25-cent raise, which will make your paychecks a little bit heavier." I'm dumbfounded. My brain packed up and jumped out of my head. This was the best deal I could have gotten ever. Forget the new job. Who can say no to an extra $20 on their paycheck? Kidding. I politely declined and told them I had already made up my mind, and for the rest of my shift, he was in the office scrambling around, posting job listings and looking for applications. It's really crazy how someone goes from being a complete dictator to a servant when they lose their power. These last 2 days, he's been nothing but cupcakes and sunshine because he knows I can leave whenever I'd like. Am I the jerk for leaving when I refuse to eat my boyfriend's mom's food? For context, I'm dairy intolerant. It makes me incredibly sick. So I, female 24, have been dating this guy, James, male 27, for 6 months now. We live in California. He moved here for a job. I've just always lived here, whereas his parents live in Missouri, so I've never really had a chance to properly meet them. About a week ago, James told me he was going up to Missouri for a few days to visit his parents and asked me if I wanted to come along and meet them, which of course I said yes to, as I naturally wanted to meet his parents in person. We arrived here yesterday, and I had made it clear to James to inform his parents that I am dairy intolerant, and he assured me that he had told them and that they knew, so I assumed there was no issue there at all. So on to the issue here. His mom was in the kitchen pretty much all day yesterday preparing a meal, and I have to say, it smelled amazing. I asked her what the dish was, and she told me it was a chicken korma curry. I assumed that she had substituted the dairy ingredients, like the yogurt and cream, with something else, so I thought nothing of it. Come time to eat, she presented me with the dish, and it looked and smelled amazing. I asked her for confirmation if it was dairy-free, and she looked at me as if I was some sort of an alien and asked why on earth a chicken korma would be dairy-free. I told her I was lactose intolerant, and she started getting extremely angry, saying that I should have told her earlier and she didn't have anything else she could make for me. James chimed in, saying he did tell her about my dairy intolerance, but then turned on me, saying that it wasn't that bad of an intolerance and I should just eat it. I honestly just felt really backed into a corner, so I started crying, saying I'm sorry, but I can't eat this. And then I left and booked myself into a nearby motel. James keeps calling me, saying how upset his mom and dad are, and saying how I disrespected his mom by not at least trying her meal. I just feel really upset, and maybe I should have just eaten a few bites and sucked it up. The intolerance isn't so severe that I'd end up in the hospital, but then again, I'd rather not have horrible stomach issues. Also, I feel like I shouldn't have just stormed out like that. Am I the jerk? Update. Thank you for all of your responses. You've all been really nice and I appreciate it. A few of you have mentioned that it was a bit overdramatic of me to storm out instead of trying to smooth things over, which I completely agree with. It's just for me personally, I don't do well with confrontation, and my fight or flight response tends to kick in when I'm presented with situations like this. So yeah, I do regret the way I responded, but unfortunately I can't take it back now. So I did finally respond to my boyfriend's calls. He was extremely apologetic and came by my room to see if I was okay. However, as soon as he got here, he started ranting at me again about his mother and her hurt feelings. I told him to leave, and I plan on getting a flight back from Missouri to California tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's a $100 flight and takes a chunk out of my budget. However, I'm feeling really uncomfy in this situation, and I want to be alone. Update 2. I just want to edit this and clarify something. There's been a few of you telling me it was my responsibility to tell his mom, not his. The reason why I couldn't tell her myself beforehand was because I had never met her before. Therefore, I had no way of contacting her except through James. When we arrived, she was already in the kitchen cooking the meal, so I couldn't have told her before she started cooking either. There really was no way I could have done anything. I just took James' word that he had told her. You just learned that 1. Your boyfriend lied to you about telling her, and 2. He would rather you be in horrific pain and discomfort than admit the truth. This boy does not care about you. This is your first red flag, and you need to pay attention to it. Leave him, not the jerk. Do not leave your classroom without asking permission. This happened yesterday. I teach at a public school. Occasionally, in the hallway I teach in, there's an overwhelming sewage smell. Normally, it's an inconvenience, but not so drastic we have to move rooms. Yesterday, it was the worst I've ever experienced since I started teaching at this school. Teachers immediately tried to move their classrooms, get out of the hallway, etc. One class moved into the principal's conference room, and from the gist of it, our principal was livid that her space was invaded. We received an email stating that we are not to move our classes without notifying our supervisor. Now that seems logical. However, the email went on to say that we are not allowed to leave our room to stroll, visit other classrooms, etc. without speaking to our supervisor or the front office. I was absolutely fired up when I read this email. I wanted to make her regret sending it as quickly as possible. I notified everyone in my hallway that they should be calling the office every time they needed to use the bathroom. I encouraged as many teachers as possible to constantly be calling to notify of their movement around campus. Within 2 hours, I had called the front office 4 times, once even just to let them know I was walking down to the front office. Most of the teachers in my building called a couple times. Once, when the main receptionist was on lunch and another support staff was covering for her, I called to let them know I was going to the bathroom, and the woman on the other end sounded so confused. "Do you need something?" she awkwardly asked. I explained that, per the email, it was expected of us to notify the office of our bathroom breaks. She chuckled and told me to have a good time. Within 3 hours, we received another staff-wide email explaining, "Okay, some clarification, and that we should not call the office if we need to go to the bathroom, have a stroll on campus, or visit another teacher's classroom." I walked down to the office later that day with the biggest grin on my face, and every support staff knew exactly why I was so happy. We all had a good laugh. One of the support staff said to me that the principal said, "I didn't mean it literally." If you're going to put something in writing to a group of professional educators and be aggressive and rude about it, you better know exactly what you're saying. The vehicle won't flip? Whatever you say, boss. So this story's from my IT teacher. We'll call him Joe. Before he was an IT teacher, he served a few years in the Marines. I don't know how many in total. He tells us a lot of stories about his time in the Marines. Some of them are really fun, and others are pretty somber. He's told us about his PTSD. It's entertaining nonetheless. Anyways, one of the stories he told us today I knew was perfect material for this sub. I did ask him for permission to post it. So when he was in the Marines, he was a sergeant. However, at the time of this, a new person joined the Marines and was about 17 to 18, much younger than him. Joe was probably in his mid-20s at this time. The new guy, we'll call him Noob, was a higher rank than Joe, but still younger and a bit cocky. So Joe and the rest of his platoon were going over Mount Fuji on an amphibious vehicle, basically a big military van. So considering it's a massive mountain, they came to a part of the mountain that had a really steep tilt to it. Now keep in mind, there's 2 types of radio communication, intercom and radio. Intercom means where it's being said will be told to everyone who has a radio, but radio will only go between 2 people. So Joe was driving the vehicle and they got to the steep part. Noob decided that he thought the vehicle could survive it and make it over fine. Joe knew that it most definitely wouldn't. He was in the Marines for much longer than Noob. Noob, over the intercom, argued with Joe. He was telling him to go forward and that the vehicle would make it, but Joe argued back with him saying it wouldn't. Eventually Noob said, "I'm ordering you to drive this vehicle forward now." Now, given that this was a direct order, Joe obviously had no choice but to comply. So, over the intercom, Joe told the rest of his platoon to buckle up and hold on tight. He closed the latch above the seat and buckled up too. Noob was confused by this, but didn't buckle up or close the latch above him. Joe started to pull forward, and once they got onto the steep part, they were going decently good. Noob seemed pretty confident. However, almost immediately, the vehicle started to tip slowly, one of those where you can feel it for a little before it tips. So Joe held on tight, and then they fell. They tumbled around and around like 5 times. During their falling, Noob flew out of the hatch, or jumped out, he wasn't sure, but wasn't really hurt. He only got a concussion from the door to the hatch hitting his head as he went out. Joe was fine due to being buckled up, but some of the other passengers weren't buckled up, so they flew around. Most of them broke a bone or two and/or got a concussion. Once they stopped, Joe got up and left the vehicle. Their gunnery sergeant, we'll call him Red, immediately ran over. Now Red was your textbook tough guy Marine sergeant. He was almost 7 feet tall, extremely built, broad-shouldered, everything you'd expect. Joe immediately started explaining that it was an order and that he had to listen. Red said he heard everything due to the argument being on the comms. Noob ran over a minute or so later and started yelling, "What did you teach them? They don't even know how to drive." Basically, sicking the blame on Joe. Red, having heard everything, stomped over to Noob and grabbed him by the front of his shirt, yanking him forward and yelling at him. He then pushed Noob forward and socked him right in the face, knocking him out and dropping him. Joe did say to the class that if Noob hadn't said everything on comms, he could have gotten in trouble, but most likely he would have straight up said no to going forward. But it was just too perfect. He's a great teacher and everyone loves him. Am I the jerk for objecting to a group of people coming in and playing a loud game at my table in a coffee shop? My team at work is remote, so I work from home. I typically spend part of my workday at a local coffee shop where most customers are working on their computers. It's a popular spot, so sometimes it's hard to find a table. Often, customers who don't even know each other will end up sharing the largest tables. When I arrived at the coffee shop today, the only open table was the largest table in the shop. It wasn't an enormous table. It seats 5 people total, but only 4 comfortably. I set up my computer and I got to work. I was finishing up a weeks-long project against a deadline later today. About half an hour later, 2 men approached the table and asked if anyone was sitting on the other side. I said no and moved my sweatshirt off the table to make room for them. I assumed they were there to work because they wore backpacks. They set their backpacks down and went to order their drinks. When they came back, one of them said to me, "Just so you know, 6 more people are coming and we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons here, so it will be pretty loud." I objected. I said that it was fine if they were here to work or have a conversation on the other side of my table, but trying to squeeze 7 people into the 4 remaining seats and playing a loud party game wasn't going to work for me. They told me I was entitled and that because this was a public space, I basically just had to deal with it. I thought this was rude. I told them that they were crowding me out of my own table because it would be impossible for me to work at the table if they were using it as a game table with a lot of other people. They had already asserted that it would get very loud. I decided to leave because I didn't have time to waste with a fast approaching deadline. As I was packing up, they mocked me for being upset, saying that they were confident I'd figure it out and that this too shall pass. Because there were no open seats in the coffee shop, I just went home. To me, it seems that if someone is at a table first, then anyone who joins that table should be basically respectful of that person. Yes, it is a public space, but am I really entitled for asking that they not disrupt my table with a loud game because I was already sitting there? What's the etiquette for sharing tables in a public space? Edit. To clarify, the coffee shop is right next to a university. Some people bring in 27-inch desktop monitors and camp out all day. I don't. 95 to 100% of the customers are studying or working. It's definitely the norm at this shop, more so than others I go to. Before my current laptop-based job, I worked as a barista for several years. I know to share space, and I also keep buying things to pay for the space I occupy. I buy something every hour, including at least one meal each time I'm there, and I usually stay 1 to 3 hours. Not the jerk. People that come along later with more people than there are seats for are rude. That is apart from many other noise considerations. However, people do like to push single folks around. Not sure about the noise factor. I think the only recourse you would have had would be to complain to staff. They're the only ones that have say-so over customers' behavior. And if this group regularly comes to play games there and the management doesn't mind, then you do have to put up with it. My coworker is mad that I wouldn't work without clocking in. So I'm 16 and I have a part-time job working carry-out for a chain restaurant. It's hourly plus tips. So Tuesday night I was scheduled 4 to 9. I don't drive, but my ride dropped me off like 15 minutes early. No big deal, I thought. There's a whole section of the restaurant that's only used on weekend nights, so during the week, employees sit at the tables if they're on break during a double. So since it's winter and I can't clock in more than 5 minutes before my shift, I figured I'd sit there and play on my phone or talk to coworkers. I wasn't there long, and one of the hosts that I thought I was cool with, Sarah, comes up to me and said, "Carryout is really busy and Tim needs help." I said, "Okay, I'll go find a manager and ask to clock in." Sarah was like, "You can't just help him?" I said, "Yeah, as soon as I clock in." She rolled her eyes and walked away. I had to walk all over looking for a manager, including past the host stand. When I walked by the host stand, Sarah said, "You're seriously not going to help Tim for a few minutes?" Eventually, I found my boss and I clocked in. The other host said Sarah kept complaining about it all night. I mean, I see both sides. It was probably annoying that carryout was busy, because if the carryout phone isn't answered in so many rings, it goes to the host stand, so it probably made more work for the hosts. My reasons for not working were, 1, I want to be paid for my time, obviously, but 2, my parents always told me not to, because if I get hurt working off the clock, the company won't care. 3, if I did it once, Sarah would expect it all the time. I worked with Sarah yesterday, and she still had an attitude. Sarah is a few years older than me and has worked there longer, and people like her, so I might have just made myself the disliked coworker over a couple of minutes. Was I wrong? Do not ever work off the clock. It's illegal, and your parents are right. Sarah is not your manager, but if she was, she could get in serious legal trouble for trying to get you to work off the clock. Sarah is probably bitter because she sold her soul to a restaurant. Volunteering is for charities, not your actual job. Good job standing your ground. I wish I was like that when I was 16. Sister-in-law loses it on me for calling my wife beautiful in front of her. I, male 29, am a doctor, and my wife, female 29, is in another high-demand, high-pay field with long hours. I've recently been working more odd hours as opposed to my wife's normal 8-about-6 routine. As such, we have not really seen much of each other for about a week. We're just normally very lovey-dovey, cuddly, and all that kind of stuff. Also, her sister, female 33, has recently divorced from her husband for reasons that are irrelevant in my opinion. Just for context, her sister had an Indian-style arranged marriage, and she does not see the point of love marriages in general. She's taking this quite hard, as in India, where she got her previous marriage from, there's sadly a lot of stigma surrounding women who have divorced, which means if she doesn't find a love marriage, she will likely be alone for the rest of her life, as very few people will want to arrange a marriage with her. I personally think the whole concept of arranged marriages is fine, but a lot of the standards and stigmas surrounding it are quite backwards. So my sister has been staying with me and my wife. We're okay with it, and she's honestly a very nice roommate, always cleaning up after herself, super respectful of our rules in our house. Recently, my wife and I got lucky, and I had my workday end at 5 on Friday, and she came home early. We were pretty excited, and once we were both home, we were together. We decided to watch a movie together for a while, and we were lying on the couch cuddling, sweet-talking to each other a little bit. Her sister came into the room and sat down on the other couch and watched the movie. We weren't really saying anything, to be honest, just stuff like how we missed each other, how it was so painful to be without each other, how we loved each other a lot, that sort of stuff. I was trying to be soft, because the sister looked like she was actually watching the film, but at one point I just held my wife's face and told her, "You're the most beautiful woman in the world." I didn't notice it at the time, but I believe that was when her sister left the room. Later on in the night, after my wife had gone off to prepare for bed, Her sister came out and yelled at me. She basically accused me of cuddling with my wife specifically to mock the fact that she doesn't have a husband anymore, and that I was saying that she wasn't beautiful when I told my wife that she was the most beautiful. I tried to calm her down, but she got more riled up, fixating on comparisons between my wife and her, getting a bit too close to me for my liking and asking me questions like, "What makes her hotter than me?" She then held out for a hug, crying a bit, but I shook my head because I was a bit concerned how she went from yelling at me to wanting physical comfort. Eventually, she just backed off and said okay, tearfully, and walked away. Am I the jerk for saying this? Should I have just given her a hug? She yelled at you and then went in for a hug? Wholly passive-aggressive, Batman. Not the jerk. She's envious and she's projecting. Not only that, I'm concerned that sister-in-law may try to create issues in OP's marriage. The fact that she waited for her sister to leave before trying to seek affection in her husband is telling worrying. Imagine if they did hug, then sister-in-law will tell sister that her husband hugged her and called her beautiful. Sister-in-law needs to go stat. OP, I really hope you told your wife what happened. Even if you aren't specifically hiding it from her, if the sister decides to spin this against you, it will look so much worse if you haven't already told your wife about it in detail. The first person to tell the story is usually the one that gets believed, so don't let the sister be the one your wife finds out from. Not the jerk. The sister's issues are not your issues, and she's making them your issues. You and your wife need to sit down and have a chat with her about boundaries. She's trampling all over yours. Her misery is not your problem. You guys have helped her out, and you're there for her. Now she's becoming a problem. It needs to be nipped in the bud if you want to keep your home feeling like a homely place for you and your wife. That's the priority here, and you should be prioritizing your wife and your marriage over her sister's sadness. Revenge on the movie producer. Please allow me to note well in advance the story is not mine. In fact, it's a rather popular story in a town I once lived in, Savannah, Georgia, and centers around one homeowner who got royally annoyed with a movie producer. Okay, so first and foremost, when movie producers are looking for places to set a movie that takes place in colonial or even 1800 cities in the US, due to the sheer number of parks, wide roads, and period houses, they will often select Savannah, Georgia. They'll pull all of the Spanish moss out of the trees or trim it back, pour dirt on the roads around the squares, and effectively backdate that part of the city to fit most any place, even up to some having used the area as a setting for places like early Washington, D.C., and even places in Britain or France. Typically, when producers do this, they will pay each homeowner whose house is used in the background a couple $1,000s for the licensing to do so. That will be important later, trust me. They have some rules, like no electric lights being visible, not coming out of any door that faces the street, and you have to move your automobiles away from the drive, if you have a drive. Well, 1979, a producer came from Hollywood with the intention of using Savannah for that very purpose. Specifically, the producer was from one of the big 3-letter TV channels and was working on making a made-for-TV movie, talking about the events after the assassination of Lincoln and the subsequent accusations of the doctor present at his death. The production went to the city to seek permission and then sent an announcement out to each of the homeowners, telling them of the various days that the shoot was going to take place. However, much to their downfall, they also noted that the production company would not be compensating the homeowners for the use of their homes as backdrops. This was met with some great annoyance by the homeowners, who turned to the city for help, only to be told that it was their civic duty to allow the use of their homes. Most everyone agreed to this and bit their lips. One homeowner, however, didn't. He decided to get revenge on the production, attempting to mess up their shooting every chance he got. He first started by leaving his car out in front of his house, only to have it towed before filming started. He threatened legal action against the studio, but that fell on deaf ears. He forbade the use of his home in some of the shots, but the production company got the city to make him back down. Eventually, enough was enough. So he waited, biding his time until he was certain they were filming. When the day came that his house was being used as a background shot, the homeowner grabbed a massive German flag from World War II and hung it out front of the house, out one of the tops of the windows. The production company balked. They knew that this ruined any shot they had used there, and what's more, they started to question just when he had put the flag up. Was it just the one day, or had all the previous shots, some which showed the house from across the square, been ruined as well? They turned to the city for help, and the city just basically shrugged, saying that it was his First Amendment right to do that, and implied that had the production company paid the homeowners, as had always been done before, then this probably wouldn't have happened. In the end, the production company had to end shooting and go to the homeowner, begging him to remove the offending flag. He did eventually do so, but only after his lawyer got a contract in writing that required the production company to pay all of the homeowners for having their homes in the shot. The flag came down and shooting wrapped up in less than a day. That stunt cost a producer quite a substantial amount of money and pushed production back at least a year while they tried to find every single instance that the flag flew in the background shots. My son's girlfriend didn't take me seriously, so I kicked her out of my house. My son, 19 male, still lives at home with me, 40 female. He's been with his girlfriend, who's 18, for about 3 years now, and he asked about her moving in with us. I eventually said yes, and she's now lived with us for around 8 to 9 months. For context, we live in a pretty big house with 2 kitchens, 2 bathrooms, and 4 bedrooms. There's an upstairs area where I sleep and have my own kitchen and the master bathroom. Downstairs, they have their own space and only need to come up to my area for showers. There are no issues with space, and I still have my privacy, so I didn't see much of a problem. But since she's moved in, I felt taken advantage of. She has no job and lost the one she did have almost immediately after moving in. She used to work full-time, but quit. When she first started living with me, she paid $80 a month rent fee, mostly to help with utilities, and her and my son bought their own food. But now that she's lost her job, they're eating a lot of my food that I buy for myself, and I'm only getting about $30 a month from my son who works part-time. So I'm left paying for almost all of their food, water, heat, etc. I was fine with this for a little while between jobs, but it's gone on for 8 months now, and I don't even think she's applying anymore. They're also very loud and inconsiderate. I sleep early, it's how I am, like 8 or 9 p.m. I like to wake up a couple hours before work and enjoy the morning, and my son was always super quiet and respectful until she moved in. Now they'll talk loudly until 12 to 3 a.m. and play music all throughout the day. I've even heard them doing other things at night that I'd really rather not. I've been unable to fall asleep until midnight on most nights. I work at 8:30, so now I'm either rushing to get out the door or losing sleep. I've told them to keep it down so many times, but I feel like a nag because they don't listen and always just say, "We are," or "Yeah, wait a sec," etc. They're completely dismissive of my needs or my sleep schedule. They just don't care. Her attitude has annoyed me because she seems to not take me seriously. I've heard her call me names behind my back multiple times. Well, a month ago, I gave her an ultimatum. I told her that if she didn't get a job and they didn't keep the noise down, then she'd have to leave. She had until the end of the month, January. Obviously, January is over now, and I stuck to my word. I kicked her out on February 12th, and she moved back in with her sister today, where she lived before moving here. My son is so mad at me. He said I'm heartless and need to give her a chance, then basically stormed in his room and hasn't spoken to me since. I've tried texting him and explaining my side, but I'm left on red. I don't want to ruin the relationship I have with my son, but the noise, disrespect, lack of job or trying, eating my food, money it cost me, it all adds up. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You did give her a chance. You told her unless she gets a job and keeps the noise down, she was out. That was the chance. Your son wanted you to give her endless chances with no consequences. Your son is being unfair. If they want to live together, they can get jobs and find their own place, like the rest of us. Not the jerk. It's your house. They need to follow your rules. In my opinion, you should have kicked your son out too, but it's your life. Good for you for sticking to your word. I'm sure it wasn't easy. You have allowed both of them to disrespect you for too long. You should have been very firm and negotiated boundaries and implemented them immediately. They felt that you were a pushover and could be manipulated. Best to learn from this and make sure you define and enforce boundaries with your son. This will ensure that you get respect in the long run. Not doing this would make you a jerk to yourself. Not the jerk for now. Boyfriend expects me to cancel plans just because of his diagnosis. I, 25 female, work in event planning, so I always get invites or tickets to go to high-end events. There was a huge event coming up that I was really excited to go to. I asked my boyfriend, who's 27, 3 days before the event to accompany me, and he said yes. So originally, the plan was for my boyfriend, my stepsister, and myself to go. On the day of the event, he said he had a doctor's appointment so he wasn't sure if he could still attend. I said no problem, and I waited for him to return home. A couple hours later, he texted me and said he has something to tell me. I got worried and called him immediately. I asked if everything was okay, and he said he was diagnosed with anemia, so he'll have to take supplements. I expressed how sorry I was, and I spoke to him for about 2 hours, gave him pep talks, and told him I'm here if he needs me, reassured him that I will always love him, etc. I then asked if he would still like to attend the event with me to take his mind off of things, to which he responded that he doesn't like the artist performing, so he'd rather go to another event. I said no problem, I'll go with my stepsister alone. He got upset and hung up. I called him back, but he started an argument about how I'm selfish for going out while he's going through something. I told him that I already made the plans with my stepsister, and I can't just back out now as she's depending on me. I also don't drink, so I would have been the sober driver, and if I didn't go, then she couldn't. I told him that this event is the only event my sister really wanted to attend, and I promised her that I would take her months prior. I even told him I'll see him the next day, and he said be safe and hung up. I got to the event around 11 and spent the entire event alone, just sitting down and watching the show by myself, having food and drinks. When I returned home around 2 a.m., I called him, and he was awake playing video games. His first words were, "Look who cares about me again." I said, "I'm too old for this," and he responded by saying that of course I'm tired. I went out without him knowing that he's upset, but I love partying and meeting new people so much that I didn't think to stay with him on the phone. I told him he's being ridiculous, and I would have stayed if it were just us who had planned to go. He said my priorities are off, and I'm an ignorant jerk. Keep in mind, I don't attend parties unless it's with my family, and I only attend events a few times a year. So, am I the jerk for not staying on the phone with him and attending the event instead? When I read the title, I expected it to be cancer or some kind of degenerative disorder, or something requiring major surgery. Anemia is generally a completely treatable condition that has no impact on quality of life, and unless the doctor referenced a concern about a more serious condition, it's reasonable to assume that supplements are all that is needed at this point. It sounds more like he's using it as an excuse to get out of something he didn't want to do, then taking it a step further to try to manipulate you. Not the jerk. When my doctor told me to take iron pills and vitamins, I was like, okay. And I told my husband, and he was like, okay. And then I got some iron pills and vitamins and took them, and everything was okay. Info. What did you talk about for 2 hours? OP. He basically cried and told me I need to make a decision on if I want to be with someone who isn't healthy and if I can see myself with him, having a family, etc. I told him I don't have any decision to make because I already made it years ago, and I chose to be with him. The call lasted 2 hours because every time I reassured him, he said something to make the situation more depressing. I love you and I want to be with you despite your diagnosis. You'd be better off with a healthy guy. I'm sure you have guy friends who want you and are healthier than I am. That's not true, and even if it was, I only want you. I'm literally dying. Stuff like that. Maybe he needs a psychological checkup too. Seems like he wants to be babied. Would I be the jerk if I told my daughter's former partner that she's pregnant with his baby? My 20-year-old daughter is currently 34 weeks pregnant. I've never met the baby's father, but he's in his late 20s and already has 2 other sons. My daughter told me that she was pregnant during Thanksgiving weekend when she came home from her freshman year of college. She later admitted about who the father was and how she had met him. In her senior year of high school, she started a new part-time job that she loved and became close to the older girls that worked there. She ended up deferring her college enrollment for a year, spending half the time working and the other half traveling. The older girls got her a fake ID and they started taking her to bars. They specifically frequently went to a bar in a neighboring town. This is where my daughter met her baby's father as he worked there and was a regular even when not working. They became friendly, and after knowing him for a few weeks, he asked her to go home with him. Then they started meeting up frequently until she left for college, when she cut him off completely, including deleting his number. Although my daughter was only 18 when she met him, she told him that she was 21, and now he thinks she's 23. He still has no idea her real age. My daughter has so far not told him that she's pregnant. She can't call him as she deleted his number, and she can't contact him online as he has no social media. The only way to contact him would be to go see him in person, either at his home or at the bar. She's scared to tell him as she doesn't think he will be happy about the baby. She's also nervous about the fact that she will have to come clean about her real age and some other stuff she apparently lied to him about. Both myself and my husband have been trying to pressure her into telling the baby's father, as the baby is due in a few weeks and could come at any time. I think she should have told him months ago, and it's unfair that she's only left him a few weeks to mentally prepare. She keeps flip-flopping between saying she'll tell him soon to maybe she won't be telling him at all. At this point, I'm ready to go to the bar to either find him or someone who can give me his number so I can just tell him myself. The last few months have been stressful for everyone in our family, and I know my daughter is going through a lot, but burying her head in the sand about the baby's father is not helping her, and it won't help the baby. I've told her if she doesn't get in contact with him by the end of the week, I will be. I know she will be incredibly mad at me if I do, but I feel like she's leaving me no choice. Would I be the jerk if I go through with it? Am I interfering too much? Should I just leave it up to her? Edit. My husband and I are currently financially supporting and hope to continue supporting her with college. We would like for her to be able to get child support so it's less of a financial burden on us, as well as for her to have more help with the baby when she does decide to return to college. Has it occurred to you that there might be a very good reason she cut him off that she hasn't specifically told you about? You could be endangering her if you go off and find this guy. Even if that weren't the case, it's not your right to share this without her permission. You would be the jerk. You would be the jerk. I get that you're trying to come from a good place, but you don't know this person. You don't know the full context on why she's choosing to not tell him, and you don't know if he will even react well to the idea of it. Separately, it seems like the only reason you're doing this is financially motivated for you and your husband. Give your daughter the space to be able to share at her own time the news instead of you doing it. Also, I don't buy she can't get a hold of him. She can totally look at her previous phone bills. There's something more going on that she's not telling you, and it's none of your business unless she feels comfortable to disclose. Not the jerk. I may be in the minority, but I think morally everyone has the right to know if they're having a kid. Your daughter is being incredibly immature by not telling him. Additionally, her relationship with this guy happened under false pretenses. However, I think you should learn more about this guy as well. You know he has 2 sons, but do you know how he treats them? Additionally, how long are you planning on financially supporting your daughter after she gives birth? OP. We hope to be able to financially support her until she's back on her own feet. We've also made all the money we previously set aside for college available to her so that she can use it however she needs to. We want her to continue with college, and she wants to continue as well, so we will help her make that a reality if that continues to be what she wants. She's told us a little about this guy. Obviously, she never met his kids, but knew that he had custody of them 3 days a week and that he was involved in their lives. Apparently, he coaches his oldest son's soccer team. She said that he told her that he didn't want any more kids, hence why she thinks he would be unhappy to learn about her pregnancy. Well, what do you think? Would OP be the jerk for getting in touch with him and telling him about this, or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my dad and stepmom they will not be invited to birthdays for their first grandkids? I, 32 female, grew up with very young parents who divorced when I was 10. Neither parent handled the divorce well, and they refused to be in the same room as one another. As a result, I grew up having separate holidays, birthdays, etc. with each parent. My mom had primary custody, so I spent the majority of my childhood and adolescence with her. I've never had a close relationship with my stepmom. I don't even talk to her outside of major gatherings, and I see her maybe 4 to 5 times a year. My mom and my dad and stepmom live 5 minutes from each other, so distance isn't a factor. My husband, who's also 32, and I got married last year. It was the first major event that everyone had to attend and play nice at. My mom and dad both promised me that it was my day and they had no issues being around each other for it. They even offered to do a combined speech. I invited my stepmom and stepsister to get ready with the girls, and my stepmom told me that she would be uncomfortable getting ready in a room with my mom, so I assumed that they didn't want to attend this portion. Stepmom then said that she would be highly offended if I took a photo with my biological family, parents and brothers, because she's my dad's wife. My mom isn't. After this conversation, I had major anxiety because it was clear she was struggling with insecurities and I was trying to make everyone happy. I okayed everything with stepmom, the parents of the bride speech, the slideshow, containing childhood photos with both parents. I even had stepmom and my mom sitting at separate tables, facing away from each other. I put in every effort possible to have a drama-free day and make everyone comfortable. After the wedding, stepmom told me that I should have done more to include her. I told her about all the effort I put in to make her comfortable on my day. She said my efforts weren't good enough and I should have treated her equally to my mom. She was offended that all the girls got ready together and stepmom and stepsister weren't invited. I reminded her that I did invite them, and she told me she wasn't comfortable being around my mom. We had a huge fight, and stepmom kept bringing up the past and bad-mouthing my mom. I asked if they could respect my boundaries and leave me out of any drama they had with my mom. Stepmom threw it back in my face because now she can't express her feelings to me. My husband and I ended up kicking them out of our house after boundaries were ignored. Now, we are 7 months pregnant with twins, the first grandbabies, and they've been excluded from all celebrations, gender reveal, baby shower, etc. It's been made clear that stepmom doesn't want to be around mom, and I'm not going to go out of my way to accommodate her after the wedding fiasco. My dad has made it clear that he won't attend any events without stepmom, so he's been excluded by default. I told my dad that if they want to be part of the grandkids' lives, then we can do separate celebrations. But mom will be attending the big celebrations as she is much more integrated into my life. Am I the jerk for telling my dad he won't be invited to major events? Not the jerk. Your stepmom is playing games. Your dad is a jerk for allowing this behavior, and your stepmom is a major jerk. Rude delivery driver wants a review. We'll give him one. Several years ago, I worked at B-Dubs, a popular wing restaurant. It's on campus, so it's crazy during football season. I was a hostess, so a big part of my job was inputting and handing out online orders to customers and delivery drivers. Part of our online order procedure was we needed the customer or delivery driver to sign the receipt for their order to confirm it was picked up. A lot of the drivers would sign and write something like, "Please review," or 5 stars next to their signature. We had an ability in our system to go back through orders and review the driver, but we were usually too busy to do so. We saw a lot of the same guys pretty regularly because it's a large campus right near the city. Most of them understood that if the order was just put in, it could take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes for it to be ready. Wings need 12 minutes to cook. Plus if there was anything to put on them, plus how busy we were. But this one dude, despite being here a lot, was just an absolute jerk. We hostesses are not cooks and have no control over how fast things get done. He knew this. We told him as much every single time he was in, but he would still stand right at the counter, pace back and forth, huff and puff, and make snide comments at us while waiting for his order. Eventually it would come up and he'd snatch it out of our hands and storm out. The last straw was when he snapped at the new girl and made her cry. I was livid, but there was nothing I could do. After he left, it got slow for a while. I was organizing delivery receipts when I realized how I could get back at him. Like I said, he was a regular and was also one of the guys that would always write, "Please review," on their receipts. The receipts list the driver's name on them. After finding his name on the receipt, I went through our online order tablet and found every single order as far back as it went and gave this jerk a 1-star review on every single order he ever picked up from us. You want a review? I'll give you a review. For those that haven't done delivery, your driver rating is based on an average from all the customers who rate you. A single 1-star rating can take you from a 4.9, my average, to a 4.7 to 4.8 if you don't have a lot of runs under your belt. I don't know about other apps, but I know the one I worked for required you to have your rating at a certain average to be allowed to continue driving, like no lower than a 4.3 or something. Several 1-star ratings would absolutely devastate someone's rating. Also, review bombing the driver has no impact on the customer. A couple days later, he's back to pick up an order. Suddenly, he's now the kindest, politest, most patient delivery driver we've ever had. Strange. Wonder what gave him a change of heart. This time, when he signed his receipt, he wrote, 5 stars please, smiley. Am I the jerk for yelling at my brother, asking him to have some empathy towards me? My life hasn't been going that great recently. I left my husband 2 months ago, and I've been miserable since. I left him because I had a crush on another man, and that made me question our entire relationship and myself too. I started dating my husband when I was 17, and I fell in love with his kindness. He was my first boyfriend ever, and he showed me care that I had never received from a man before. Long story short, I've left him after almost 10 years of being together because I started questioning why I've fallen in love with him. I had a horrible father growing up, and I never went to therapy and never tried to process that. I just tucked it away and got married to a man who was the complete opposite of him and a people pleaser. Upon leaving my husband, I moved back in with my mother. My father has since passed, and my little brother lives here too, and now I hate my life and I miss my husband terribly. I have to commute 3 hours a day to work, and my mother and brother are much more difficult roommates than my husband was. My brother especially is frustrated by my presence and constantly picks fights with me. Yesterday, he was yelling at me through the door about taking too long in the bathroom, and I told him to calm down and don't be such a jerk. He asked, when will I finally move out, because I'm always in the way, and told me I was an idiot for leaving my husband and I should go and beg him to take me back, but he probably won't because I'm impossible to live with. I snapped and I yelled at him, asking him to have some empathy for me. I'm going through a hard time and I really don't need him to be such a jerk to me. He replied that it's not his problem. I created this situation for myself, and it's not fair that he has to suffer the consequences of my actions too, and I don't deserve his empathy. He's right that it is my fault. I created this situation. I only have myself to blame. Am I the jerk for yelling at him? Edit for info. My brother is 22, and his problem is basically just me being here. Not that I'm messy or loud, just that I'm present. He likes to send our mother away for the night to her boyfriend when he wants to have company over, and it really bothers him that he can't really send me away like that. Also, I didn't leave my husband for the other guy. I stopped talking to that man as soon as I realized I had a crush. Not the jerk. It sounds like your brother might have taken a few pages out of your father's book, and they ain't pretty. Everyone has huge introspective moments in their marriage at some point. Figure yourself out. Do you want to go back to your husband? It might be too late, but maybe not. Make up your mind where you want to go from here, even if it's in baby steps, like getting an apartment to get away from Toxic Jr. Not the jerk. Sounds like your brother is a chip off the old block. He's not going to change. He cares nothing about you and everything about his routine being changed. He has no more empathy than your father did. You made a bad decision and you're living with the result. All you can do now is move forward and find your own place closer to work. I also recommend talking with your ex, if that's an option. Not in the hopes of reconciliation, but with the idea of full disclosure and apologizing to him for ending things like you did. You need to experience living on your own and knowing you're capable of doing so before getting into any other relationship. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her brother? Please let us know. Karen waitress threw away my food when I wasn't looking, so I left her no tip. My girlfriend and I recently went out for dinner. It took them a while to seat us as they were short-staffed. We ordered an appetizer to split as well as a meal each. I noticed that they were really trying to rush us along, bringing out our meals at the same time as the appetizer. The server kept grabbing things off the table, asking, "All finished with this?" and beginning to walk away with it in her hand before I stopped her and told her that we weren't finished. After the third time, first the bread, then my half-filled beer, and then the appetizer, I had enough. I understand you have a job to do. Please do not touch anything in front of me until it's cleared and off to the side. Stop interrupting our meal. Please go away, I said very sternly. A friend of mine came in and was seated at a table nearby. I turned around to greet him and engaged in chit-chat for about 2 minutes. When I turned around, my meal, which I had barely touched, was gone. My girlfriend hadn't even noticed it gone missing. I called the waitress over, who handed me the check and asked, "Will there be anything else?" I told her my meal had disappeared. She blankly replied, "Oh, I thought you were done." I said, "No, I'm still eating. Go get my dinner and bring it back here." She replied, It got thrown out. Because you looked like you were done, so yeah." I told her to go get me her manager. She responded that he didn't have time to see me. I told her that he needed to make time because I was about to make a scene in 4 seconds. She left and a minute later came back and said that he was too busy. I told her to reprint the check without my meal on it. She refused, saying I had ordered it, I had to pay for it, and walked away. I let my girlfriend finish her meal, took the check, put a line through the cost of my meal, pulled cash out of my wallet to cover the appetizer, drinks, and my girlfriend's meal, wrote, "No tip. Your server was rude, incompetent, and threw out my dinner," and handed it to the cashier as one bundle as I walked out. My girlfriend thinks I went a bit overboard and that I should have at least tipped for the other employees involved. My mother, a retired waitress, is furious that I took it upon myself to alter a check and leave without paying for food I ordered. She thinks it was an honest mistake and I need to be more understanding. I'm usually on the side of the servers, but this seems a bit much. Who takes someone's food without even asking if they want to box it up, especially if there was a lot left over? Not the jerk. Karen neighbor keeps parking in my driveway, so I got her car towed. A few days ago, I came home from work and I saw my neighbor, Lindsay, her car was in my driveway. I was confused and I asked her very nicely to move her car, and she did. The day after that, my husband came home from work before I did, and he saw Lindsay's car in our driveway again. He asked her to move her car and told her that she can't do that anymore because it's not her house. He said he was polite about it, and she apologized and moved her car again. The day after that, I saw Lindsay's car parked in my driveway again after I got home from my doctor's appointment and my husband was at work. I decided to ask her what's going on. Her, "What do you mean?" Me, "You keep parking your car in our driveway after we've asked you nicely not to do it. Why do you keep doing it?" Her, "I have a big camper parked in my driveway and it takes up a lot of space. There isn't enough space to park my car." Me, "Okay, well you need to figure something out because you can't park your car in our driveway anymore. It's rude and you've already been told to stop. If you do it one more time, I'll have your car towed." She apologized to me and promised that it wouldn't happen again. Last night, my husband and I went out for dinner. When we got back home, we saw Lindsay's car parked in our driveway again. I told my husband that this was it. Enough is enough. I'm going to tow her car because she's been warned. We've tried asking her nicely and she doesn't want to listen to us. My husband agreed and I towed her car right away. I also stuck her with the bill because it's her own fault. Now she's calling me a jerk and she's upset with me. She left a note in my mailbox. She called me a drama queen and she wants to be repaid for the tow bill because it was my idea to tow her car instead of acting like an adult and asking her to move it. If I don't repay her, she will park her car in my driveway again because I'm being petty. I dare her. I'll just tow her car again. Update. Lindsay parked her car in our driveway again. I wasn't home, but my husband was, and he got her car towed an hour away. She left a nasty note in my mailbox again. It read, "You guys owe me a lot of money for towing fees. I will continue to park in your driveway until you sell your house and move." I told her if she wants us to move so badly, then she's obligated to buy us a new house. She refused to buy us a new house, and she doesn't think that we can force her to. I told Lindsay if she doesn't want to buy us a new house, then I have no choice but to file a police report and the cops will see all of the notes she's left us. Now she's fuming. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for takeout that I forced my partner to order? Forced is their words, not mine. I saw another Am I the Jerk about cooking, and it made me think of my own situation from a couple of weeks ago. I don't think I was being the jerk, but my partner's still mad about it, posting from a throwaway account as mutual friends are on Reddit. Last month, my, 32, company announced that we would be laying people off. I was in the office that day and it was awful. Person after person was brought into HR, told that they were being separated and escorted out of the office. After they were done, they called a second meeting and told those of us left that the layoffs were over. A lot of the people I work with were let go. I texted my partner, who's also 32, about both announcements. Once to tell them about the layoffs and then to tell them that I was safe. In the second text, I also told them I would not be home until late. My team had decided to stay late and figure out how to redistribute the work so that our projects wouldn't fail. We sat in a conference room and worked through all of the projects and didn't leave until almost 9 p.m. Starting at about 8, my partner began texting me asking when I was getting home, what was for dinner, and that they were hungry. I kept replying that I didn't know when I would get home, that I would make dinner when I got home, and that if they were hungry, they could make dinner or have a snack and wait. I didn't get home until almost 10, and I found empty takeout containers in the kitchen. I asked if they had ordered takeout. They had. If they had ordered me any, they had not. And if they were still hungry, they were not. It was late, and I was emotionally exhausted, so I didn't eat and I went straight to bed. The next weekend, I found a Splitwise for their meal allocated 100% to me. Since we moved in together, we put all shared expenses like rent, bills, groceries, and takeout in Splitwise with a 70-30 split. Individual expenses, like if one of us buys lunch at work, do not go in Splitwise. I thought it was a mistake, so I deleted it. The next day, they got mad at me for not paying for their takeout. According to them, it's my job to make dinner, and my staying out late meant I didn't have dinner ready in a reasonable time. Since they were hungry, dinner wasn't ready, and they didn't know when dinner would be made, so they were forced to order takeout. Because making dinner is my responsibility, I should pay for their takeout. My refusing to take responsibility and pay for their takeout makes me the jerk. I don't think I am the jerk because this was an extraordinary situation and we had food in the house that we could have eaten. They chose to order $80 of takeout for just themselves instead. Since they did not order any for me, it was not a shared expense, and I don't feel like I should have to pay for it. They're still mad that I won't pay for their takeout. They say that I forced them to order it because I didn't make dinner by a reasonable time. Answers to some of the questions and comments. How things got this way. I'm not sure. We were together for several years before lockdown, but we only moved in together during the lockdown. When we were both working from home, we split chores and cooking equally. My partner had to go back to the office about 6 months before I did. Once they started going back to the office, they asked me to make dinner since I was home all day. Going back to the office was really stressful for them, so I wasn't fussy about it. Plus, I only have to go in 3 days a week, so on days I'm working from home, I have time after work to cook, pick up the place, etc. Somehow it turned into cooking dinner is my job, even after I had to go back to the office. I don't mind because I usually enjoy cooking. So I do the cooking, the grocery shopping, and the kitchen cleanup. They generally text me when they leave the office so I can have dinner and a clean house waiting for them when they get home. Has this happened before? No. Questions about the takeout. The takeout they ordered was sushi, which can be very expensive. I don't know why they didn't order any for me also, as I love sushi, but I'm guessing it was because sushi is really expensive and maybe they assumed I would eat at work. Why we're together? We're together because we love each other and we have a great time together. They're usually really empathetic, but I know work has been stressful for them as they work in accounting and it's tax season. Why the 70-30 split on bills? When we moved in together, I made slightly twice what they made. We agreed to split all shared spending proportionately. No, we don't have any kids. And finally, I find it weird that everyone is assuming I'm female and my partner is male. I kept this gender neutral for a reason, and I'm not going to change that. I will say that at least half of the assumptions on gender are wrong. Why are you with this person? A compassionate partner would have made you dinner since you had such a difficult day, not whine and moan because you didn't get home at your normal time to cook for them. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Let me get this straight. Your partner texted you during an incredibly stressful day at work asking when you're getting home to make them dinner. Your partner ordered themselves food, but they didn't bother to order anything for you, even though they knew what you were going through at work. Your partner demanded that you pay for their takeout that they ordered and ate and didn't share with you because it's your responsibility to feed them? Why on earth are you with this selfish narcissist? Your partner should have had dinner waiting for you because of the day you had. This is mind-blowing to me. Dress for the job you want, not the job you have. I work for a family business with over 30 employees. This is a company that has friends and family members as top-tiered management and often made up rules whenever they felt like it. When new employees join the company, they sign a basic employment contract stating the compensation, benefits, and work hours. The company does not have a written code of conduct. One particular manager is a friend of the president. Let's call her Sally. Sally manages a team of 8 employees, including myself. We aren't allowed to make small talk while working, and we are required to let her know when we start taking our breaks and when we return from our breaks. Sally interjects whenever a team member is asking another team member questions because Sally is a micromanager. Sally also makes us come to work early once a week for 30 minutes, unpaid, so that she can recap the previous week and often uses this time to tell us what we're doing wrong. She made it clear that this weekly meeting is mandatory. During one meeting, she brought up expectations for continued employment at the workplace. No swearing, no talking bad about customers amongst ourselves, no personal phones on desks, no music during work hours, no talking to other departments unless it's work-related, etc. Then she brought up dress code. It's important to note that we've never heard of a dress code at work, and our jobs do not require face-to-face interactions with customers. Most of our dealings are via phones or email. We may see a customer drop by once or twice a year, but most of the team members wear hoodies and long-sleeve t-shirts with jeans or leggings. I usually wear a simple top with pants with my hair neatly blow-dried. Apparently, that's not appropriate enough. Sally said we should try to dress better and more professionally to keep up with the company's image. Her sell was, "Dress not for the job you have, but the job you want." She made us all sign a document citing the topic of discussion at the meeting. You want us to dress for the job we want? Okay. A few of my colleagues and I decided to maliciously comply the following day. I put my hair in a messy bun, wore my Costco leggings and my husband's old t-shirt. That was my everyday look when I was unemployed. Sally saw me when I walked through the door and asked why I was underdressed. I told her, "You asked us to dress for the job we want. I want to go back to being a stay-at-home mom. I loved staying at home." She said, "That's not what I meant. I meant bigger aspirations and goals," as she looked at me with exasperation. Shortly after, my other colleagues showed up, one after the other, two wearing full workout gear and one wore her anime costume. One guy wore a t-shirt with all kinds of words on it. The president noticed and asked us if Halloween came early, and we told him what Sally said. I don't know what happened, but safe to say, there was no mention of any dress code since. Am I the jerk for telling a girl her presence offends me, then asking her to leave? My ex, Josh, 18 male, and I, 18 female, have a 1-year-old together. He's a good parent and all, but we don't really mesh well. After a while, all we'd do was fight, and we decided to break up. Before we started dating, there was this girl, Zoe. Apparently, Zoe and Josh never dated, but everyone insists that they would have had she not moved away. One of the first things Josh's friends said to him when we broke up was, "You should call Zoe up." I've heard plenty of how perfect they are for each other. She's super pretty too. I'll admit, she was another reason we broke up. Even though she moved hours away, her and Josh would still talk. Nothing ever happened, but you know. Well, she moved back into the area some weeks ago, and I haven't seen Josh this happy in a long time. Our daughter's birthday was soon, and we agreed on doing birthdays together, and Josh asked if Zoe could be there too, since all of our friends were coming anyways. I was going to say no, but I technically had no reason to. She's been super nice to me and our daughter, and it's not like Josh and I are together anymore. She came, and everyone's attention was on her. Many of them hadn't seen her in years, and well, like I said, she's very pretty. My daughter obviously didn't care, but I felt that everyone was being a bit rude. Even Josh's dad was like, "Wait, you're the Zoe?" and talked to her for ages, saying how glad he was to finally meet her. Don't get me wrong, everyone was super sweet to my daughter, and my daughter really likes Zoe, but she was the main topic the whole time. My mom noticed this too and kept trying to turn the attention to my daughter. When she gave up, I got really upset. Everyone went out to the backyard, and Josh had our daughter. Zoe stayed behind for whatever reason. She started telling me how cute my daughter is. I wasn't in the mood though, so I just replied with, "Mm-hmm." She noticed and was like, "Did I do something to offend you?" She looked at me like I was crazy, and I was so over it. I told her that her whole presence offends me and that I'm tired of hearing about her all the time. I then asked her to please leave. I heard her call me a jerk, but she quickly just whispered something to Josh and left. Now everyone is mad at me because Zoe said she doesn't feel welcome. My parents are the only ones on my side, but I don't know how reliable that is considering. Please be honest, am I the jerk here? You're the jerk. She did nothing to you. You were unforgivably rude to her for reasons that are purely internal. You're the jerk, and you're letting your jealousy show. Of course people are going to be more interested in an adult who they've heard a lot about versus a little kid's birthday. Everyone sucks here. It would have been amazing if you'd had the grace to endure that party and express your feelings later. Your mom sucks for fueling your insecurities. Everyone else sucks for letting your daughter's birthday party turn into the Welcome Back Zoe event. I'm going against the grain here, but not the jerk. This is your kid's birthday party, a day to celebrate your kid. This woman doesn't know your kid. She's not even your friend. She did not belong at your kid's birthday party at all, and it was incredibly rude for her to even come. Your ex is a jerk for inviting her. Who invites strangers to their daughter's birthday party? His focus at that party should have been on his kid, not the woman that he's trying to get with. Your friends were also incredibly rude, turning your daughter's party into an impromptu event celebrating someone not even related to the kid, nor do they even have a relationship with them. If they want to party with Zoe, they can do it themselves, not on your dime and not at your kid's expense. That everyone knows and acknowledges that your ex would probably like to date Zoe over you makes all of this 1,000 times worse. Aside from the fact that Zoe should have had the tact and social clue not to go in the first place, the minute people started making this party about her, she should have shut that down. Party is about the baby, not about her. Taking over someone else's party is incredibly rude. That's why you don't wear white to someone else's wedding. Don't feel bad about snapping at someone who didn't do anything. She, your ex, and the other guests absolutely did, and they know it. I'm so glad to see some sanity in this comment section. Incredibly tacky for Zoe to even show up, in my opinion. Imagine being in OP's shoes. It's your daughter's birthday, and this woman shows up, and all of your friends make it about her. Not to mention Zoe having a history with OP's ex. Something tells me Zoe isn't as naive as she's pretending to be with the whole, "Did I offend you?" comment. Is it too much to ask to not have all this unnecessary BS at your own kid's birthday party? Zoe knew exactly what she was doing with that "Did I do something to offend you?" comment. Like, at that point, you're just taunting this poor girl. Were the rude? Sure, but given the context, come on. OP is human, and the fact that she even invited her and tolerated her BS is gracious enough. And then to call her names at her own party, I'd kick her out too. Forget Zoe. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for how she acted or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for not making a second meal for a kid? I, 30 female, am friends with a couple, Mike and Sandra, who are 35 and 38, and invited them and their kid, who's Charlie, who's 9, over for dinner. Before they came over, I texted them to find out if any of them had any food sensitivities, allergies, needs, etc. The wife said that there was nothing I needed to worry about. I decided on something a bit kid-friendly while still feeling like I was cooking for adults, so I settled on chicken parmesan with some chocolate cake for dessert. I figured it's like chicken nuggets mixed with pizza, which kids would like. It turned out really well for someone who just started cooking like me. My friends were telling me that it was good, and maybe they were just being polite, but they ate everything. Charlie poked at her meal, and the entire time that we were eating, I'm not sure she ate any of it. After we were done, I brought out the chocolate cake. Charlie ate a tiny bite and immediately started bawling. Sandra asked her what was wrong, and she cried that she didn't like chocolate. Sandra continued to comfort her daughter while Mike and I awkwardly ate dessert. A couple of minutes pass, and I notice Sandra is glaring at me. I hesitantly asked her if I could help her with Charlie. I'm not good with kids, which she knows, but I wasn't sure what else to do. She huffed and asked, "Is there anything you'd like to say to Charlie?" It took me a second to realize that she wanted an apology for her kid not eating my food. I thought it might help cheer Charlie up at least, so I said I was sorry that she didn't like my food. Charlie started crying harder, and her mom asked me if I had anything that she would like instead. I drew the line there. I told her that I wasn't going to cook anything else, and that if I didn't like what my mom made me as a kid, I went to bed hungry. Mike is just silently eating his cake while Sandra tried to convince me to make something else for Charlie to eat. I stood up from the table and asked Mike if he would like me to wrap up his cake for him to take home because the rest of his family was not apparently having a good time. I suggested that Sandra could go home and make something for Charlie to eat. Sandra scoffed at me and said something about how I was cooking tonight and she thought she could have taken the night off. I knew I was about to say something I really regretted, so I slammed my plate on the table and told her to get out. Mike seemed genuinely embarrassed as they left. I haven't spoke to any of them since, and now I'm thinking I overreacted by kicking them out of my house. Edit. This happened about 3 days ago, and I'm going to reach out to Mike today when it's not 4 a.m. Thanks for the perspective, everyone. I reached out to Mike today to apologize for kicking them out. Mike apologized for everything. He said that Sandra's mother had been admitted to the hospital that day, so understandably, nobody was really on their best behavior. He said they drove straight from the hospital to my house. He said he would have said something about it, but Sandra had asked him not to mention it so they could focus on dinner, which is totally fair. Charlie isn't normally a picky eater. She was just upset about her grandma. Why she latched on to saying she didn't like chocolate is really anyone's guess. Sandra's mom is doing better now, and while the family didn't behave at their best, I've got no hard feelings about dinner anymore. Maybe they're lying, maybe not, but I'm willing to give the friendship one more chance, though I probably won't cook for them again. Not the jerk. She was out of line. If she has a picky kid, she could pack snacks or food for her. Crying over chocolate cake? Ridiculous. You did nothing wrong. Mom was wrong. The kid is not your responsibility, and catering to her food issues isn't your job. Not the jerk. Her kid, her problem. She didn't make any comment on the food for her kid when you asked, and you don't go to someone else's invite and demand other food. Also, 9 is old enough to talk, not cry at everything. Both of them need to apologize to you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friends? Please let us know. It's sad that their grandma's in the hospital, but having a grandma in the hospital doesn't just automatically turn a good person into a complete Karen. Like, it just peels back the layers to show the Karen that was there all along. Put that on my personal credit card. Okay. In 2000, I was hired by a company in the construction industry. In 2002, they asked me to help start a new division of the company. They are the owners and the general manager. The general manager made it known that he didn't like me after my first year. Intermittent little digs, flippant attitude, demeaning, etc. Cut to after we get the new division up and running, and I request being able to start a web presence. Ownership is all over the endeavor, while the general manager brushes me off and says, "It's your division, do what you want." My division functioned with a separate business name. As I'm purchasing the domain name, my thoughts turned to the mothership and how it has zero web presence. Checked out and lined up the actual 2 business names and several close permutations so they would be somewhat secure in knowing their business names couldn't be taken out from under them. I go to the general manager and ask for a check from the main company to pay for the domain names, and he again brushes me off, saying, "It's your division." His favorite line, "Do what you want. You've got a credit card. Expense it like anything else." I did start to ask, "Are you sure you want me to put it on my personal?" and was curtly cut off. By 2004, my division was running at a 44% profit margin, which netted $750,000 a year. In the first 6 months of its existence, I had already paid back the build-out, training, machines, equipment, all the startup and setup. This is how successful this division was. The general manager became jealous of my achievements and tried to seize control over operations, citing he was the general manager of the entire company, whereas prior, it was my division to do what I wanted. Each horn in by him, I'd deflect and defend my division. By 2005, I'd had enough and ended up quitting as I heard he was preparing to fire me to fully seize the shiny penny as his own and take all of the credit. I planned ahead, saved money, quit, and took 6 months off. It was a spring to fall extravaganza of doing whatever I chose. Good times. About a year later, I can't remember exactly how long, a charge appeared on my credit card for my former company's domain names. Being for several, the amount stood out like a sore thumb. I called and verified the charge and who and what it was for, and in my conversation with a very nice person, they said, "Yes, Mr. X, all of these names are registered to you." About 3 years after I'd left the old company, my phone rings, and guess what number pops up on the screen? Oh yeah, I let that go to voicemail. The message was from the bookkeeper asking if I could return their call. Next day, here they try again, but straight to voicemail they go. After a week of messages, they were now pleading me to call them back. I returned the bookkeeper's call. Well, the cat came out of the bag, and the main company finally decided to build out a web presence and had shelled out a ton of money to do so. Think online catalog, interactive web page, all the things we expect now, but were high-tech then, and were just coming into functional reality. Lo and behold, when they went to get their beautiful .com up and functioning, their exact name was taken, as well as a string of similar ones they could have used had I not snatched them up. The bookkeeper asked me to release the names to them. I indicated that would be very easy to do. It's a simple matter of signing them off, no? They agreed as their anxious web builder had prepped them for the chat with me. I said I'd be happy to turn the keys to the kingdom over to them, but I wanted a few things. Reimbursed for all the expenses up until that point for owning the domain names. A finder's fee. That really upset them, but what can I say? I was yelled at to put their domain names on my personal credit card, and the general manager himself would have to hand-deliver the check. That third line item was a sticking point, but dear Mr. Manager was forced to bend the knee. I mean, I certainly wasn't going to budge. General manager shows up at the appointed place, hands me the check, and barks at me about returning their domain names to them today. He did this so loudly, people in the coffee shop we met at turned and stared. I laughed and said, "After the check clears, sure, yeah." He balked and insisted I immediately transfer the names to them as I was holding up the entire show. As I left, I smiled and said, "You're to blame here. You yelled at me to put the domain names on my credit card." He was absolutely fuming at this point. Besides, I love taking your advice to do what I want. Remember? and I am. My cousin arrested my father. I gave him the go-ahead. One day, my father, my cousin, and myself were at a gardening store to buy some pieces to repair a sprinkler system. They were small items. We find what we need, but one of them had the tag scratched and for sure wouldn't scan at the checkout. I said we have to find one with a proper tag, but my father said there's no need. He takes the tag off and puts the item in his pocket. Me and my cousin look at each other like, what? When asked, my father said they won't even notice it. Since it had no tag, it wouldn't activate the alarm at the entrance. 2 things you need to know going forward. 1. My cousin is a police officer fresh out of the academy. 2. My father has always had an attitude of superiority towards the kids of the family. Something like, I'm your father, uncle, etc. You won't dare cross me, no matter if we're already adults with jobs and our own homes. So my cousin asks if he realizes he could have him arrested for this, to which he responds by laughing, and then he said he dares him to do it. We walk towards the registers, and while waiting in line, my cousin whispers in my ear, "You know what I'm about to do, right?" To which I reply, "Yes." He waited for my father to pay for the stuff he wanted, to pay for it, and to go past the alarm sensors so that the theft would be official and not just intent. Then he started acting like police. He presented himself as an off-duty police officer, badge number, etc., loud and clear so that people would hear. Then he asked my dad to empty his pockets. A puzzled look covered my dad's face at this point. Security comes to check what's going on, and my cousin explains that him, an off-duty officer, witnessed this man putting an object in his pocket and did not pay for it. Security also asks him to empty his pockets, and there it is, the item he stole. Security detains my dad and calls 911. Police officers came and they took my dad away after confirming the story with the security footage. He spent the night in jail and got hit with a fine. After that, he stopped acting like the king of the family's hill, and this would be something to laugh at for years to come. Am I the jerk for not lending money to my partner's family? I feel bad about this, but I don't think it's right to keep bailing them out. My partner, 24, female, and her family have always been terrible with money, spending beyond their means and never having enough for basic bills and necessities. I managed to get my partner on the right track. She now has a budget and lives to her means and finds it a lot less stressful and more manageable. However, every month for the last year, she always has to lend money to her mom, sister, and brother individually so that they can pay their bills. In my eyes, it's her money. If she wants to help them, sure. It's her family and I understand. However, it's been going on for so long that I think they rely on her and expect it from her now, so don't do anything to fix their budgets and fix their actual cause of the issues. Last month, my partner had to spend a bit more than usual because she got a flat tire. I won't bore you with the details. But anyway, her family asked her for money again, and my partner asked if I could lend it instead. I said yes, because I knew my partner was in a tight spot this month. But I told her to tell them to make a budget so they could live to their means and not rely on our money. In total, I lent out about £150 to them. I finally got this money back a few weeks ago, but it became very obvious my partner gave me it out of her budget as she was starting to struggle herself this month. I asked her about this, and she told me not to worry since I got my money. Fast forward to today, and all 3 of them are asking for money again, which shocks me because it's the middle of the month. My partner can't afford it, obviously because she had to front their £150 payment to me, and asked me again if I could lend it. This time I said no. I said if we keep bailing them out, they'll never learn. My partner begged me and said they need it for petrol and groceries, and I asked for a complete list of all bills they need to pay each month, how much they earn, and why they cannot afford such basics. My partner said she wasn't going to ask for this because it's embarrassing for them, but did say she knew 2 of them had stayed in expensive hotels for Valentine's Day and spent a fair bit of money on them. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. I said no. They're now saying that they will be unable to get to work and pay for their electric bill and car payments. I feel bad. My partner says she understands, but I know she's hurt and sad for them and doesn't want them to struggle. Am I the jerk for this? Not the jerk. Can you send them a link to money management courses? Maybe offer to sponsor them in those. But you are correct in that enabling their poor money management means that it will absolutely continue. My Karen girlfriend found out my parents are rich. Now she's mad I won't pay her medical and college debt. My family is low-key wealthy, but my parents have made sure that we are never flashy about it. We live in the same place we've lived for about 15 years, don't have flashy clothes and cars, and generally make sure we're spending money on experiences rather than objects. Cue my younger sister, who's totally spoiled and for some reason feels extremely entitled to her share of the wealth. She just turned 21, and I think part of it is her finally getting information about her trust and in general how we stand. I'm 25 and I'm the older one, so I've sort of known about all of this for a while now. Anyway, long story short, my sister ended up going car shopping with my girlfriend for expensive new cars, Porsches. My dad has not approved anything, so I don't know what she's going to do, but apparently she flashed my dad's credit card and talked up the salesman about how much money she has to spend. My girlfriend was shocked that me driving a simple, unassuming 10-year-old Lexus will have a sister throwing $100,000 at a car. We had a huge discussion and ended up fighting about it. She was shocked at roughly how much money we had and told me I was a tad selfish for not mentioning it when she had college and medical debt. Honestly, we've only been dating for 2 years, and I was thinking after about a year I would propose if things are going well and start this discussion. It's all happened a little too soon. I'm really mad at my sister and kind of laid it out on her. Told her how immature and selfish she was and how she is undoing everything our parents have worked hard for to install values in us. She told me I had to grow up and I'm a wet blanket. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. The biggest jerk here is your girlfriend for assuming that because you come from a wealthy family, you're obligated to pay off her debt. Is this really the kind of person that you want to have a relationship with? OP. Yeah, that kind of caught me off guard. Your parents' money has nothing and will never have anything to do with her college and medical debt. That was a strange thing for her to say. I don't get why people would be mad at not being told about wealth. Are they equally as mad about not being told of a family debt? I'm blown away that she thinks she's entitled to it. My girlfriend keeps destroying my non-stick cookware. Until she moved in with me, she had always lived at home. For some ungodly reason, her parents never taught her how to cook. She can reheat food and make spaghetti and stuff like that, but anything more complicated like a fried egg is hard for her. I have silicone rubber utensils that I use on my non-stick pans. It's great. Cleanup is so easy. She took about 2 weeks to destroy all of my non-stick pans. She uses forks or a metal spatula to move and scrape the food around. I had taken the time to show her how to use the non-stick stuff. I had shown her where all of the utensils were. Didn't matter. She scraped off the non-stick coating. So all the food she was making was sticking to the pan. I have no idea how she managed to do it, but somehow she got a grilled cheese sandwich stuck to the pan. She wants me to replace the pans now, so I did. I pulled my cast iron out of the garage. I cleaned it really well, and then I seasoned it all to make it non-stick. I also bought a bunch of those cloth covers for the handle so she doesn't burn herself. She's mad at me for making her use cast iron like Little House on the Prairie. I told her if she wants, she can purchase her own pans to cook in, but that since I don't like flakes of Teflon in my food, I won't eat any of it. She said she didn't damage my pans, so I let her buy one. Then I made bacon and a Spanish fried egg in it. Then I wiped it clean with some paper towels and showed her the pan. She had scraped off the coating in a couple of weeks. Now she's worried about all the Teflon that she's consuming. She went over to her parents and asked her mom how she never scratched up the pans. Her mom showed her the silicone utensils she has. She says that if I replace the pans, she promises to use the proper utensils. I offered to pay for half. She said that I was being a cheap jerk. Oh yeah, before I post, she's a full-grown 26-year-old adult. It's not like she's 18 or something. Not the jerk. That's not just not knowing how to cook. That's intentionally being destructive. She broke it, she buys the new ones. That's not on you. Not even half the price of it. Not the jerk. So you told and showed your girlfriend that she was doing a basic household chore in a manner that, to put it bluntly, was wrong. She was completely closed off to the possibility that she was wrong and was unwilling to consider that your opinion might be the correct one. But once her mommy showed your girlfriend she was wrong, she was willing to accept that she had, in fact, destroyed the non-stick pans. So your opinions about her basic life skills don't count while her mother's word is gospel? I hope I'm interpreting this situation incorrectly. Not the jerk. It's ridiculous that everyone knows you don't put metal in the microwave, but can't figure that out for non-stick coatings. Besides putting all the non-stick utensils on display and hiding all the metal stuff, you also need to teach her that the burner knobs have settings other than high or off. Oh, that was Katie's job. I was working for a manufacturer years ago. It was a small operation run by a husband, the CEO, and wife, with a sister business of a front-end platform that was run by the wife's brother. The husband's mom and some cousins also worked there between the two businesses. With an operation like this, you had the typical micromanagement from CEO, minimum wage pay for top-dollar performance expectations, and the general nonsense you can expect in a setup like this. I had this job while in college and needed to build my resume. They let me have a flexible schedule so I could leave early for my night classes and when I had midterms and finals, so I knew I had to stick it out. After about 6 months of working there, my job responsibilities grew tremendously, but my salary did not. There was a high turnover rate in the office from the "we're a family" environment that meant actual family got special treatment and everyone else was expected to do a crazy amount of work without getting any credit. One of my friends, we'll call her Katie, was looking for work and my company was hiring. I told her what she was getting into, but as a recent college grad looking for office experience, she decided to give it a shot. First, my referral bonus never came, even after she had worked there for 90 days, and I was told that I shouldn't inquire about it because I referred someone to help the company, not to get the extra money. I wasn't in a position to push it, so I didn't. I trained Katie in her role as she was taking some of my old responsibilities. Well, the CEO and the wife didn't like how much time the two of us spent talking to each other or how much time we spent away from our desks, which was genuinely us using the restroom or getting water. This made no sense because I handled product onboarding and Katie suggested products for curated events, so it was important that she knew what new products were coming out and when she could start promoting them so that stock wouldn't sit in the warehouse. We separately had meetings with the CEO and office manager, putting us on probation for this behavior. Cue malicious compliance. We stopped talking as much in the office, effectively cutting me off from curated events and making it impossible for Katie to use our new products on the upcoming events. Events could be scheduled anywhere from a week to several months in advance, so it was a great way to boost sales and visibility for our new items. My friend ended up getting fired for having a brain and questioning some of the stupid policies. Also for doing something so outrageous as taking her unpaid lunch hour, showing up at 9 and leaving at 5. Normally, I would have gone back into the platforms to curate events until they found someone to take over the role, but I was petty. I had been there a little over a year. I was training employees, teaching myself the ins and outs of all of our retailer backends to upload products, coordinating with our factories overseas, the freight companies, and our warehouse so that products would be live as soon as we had stock and was still getting paid like I did for the minimal role I had when I got hired. So, not my job, not my problem. Fast forward a few months. The CEO decides to show up to work on the office floor instead of working out of his private office. Whenever he was on the floor, he was always super loud and disruptive to the general flow. I hear him talk about sales from the past few months, specifically about sales from events, so naturally my ears perk up. He starts getting louder. "I don't get it. There's this huge decline in sales. None of our new products are getting any traction." I haven't been addressed, so I keep tapping away at my computer and act oblivious. He calls over the office manager and they start hashing it out. 6 months ago, the sales for our new items went down significantly. I'm thinking, yeah, duh. That's when you told me and Katie to stop talking. The initial data that was supplied with product photos and descriptions weren't clear. It would have been a very long process for Katie to sift through the new products to try and match them to events, as opposed to what we used to do, which was she would tell me the theme and what she was looking for, and I'd get her the data on a short list of items that she could review to match said events, as opposed to dumping 100 products on her. Then 3 months ago, they became almost non-existent. Sales have dropped almost 70% with these events. 3 months ago is when Katie got fired. Eventually, the two of them piece together that they need to blame whoever is curating events, and the CEO starts asking everyone in the office, "Whose responsibility is it to work on events?" Finally, it gets to a point where I can't stay quiet. The office is too small, and I play too big of a role in product management, so I chime in. "Oh, wasn't that Katie's responsibility?" CEO replies, "She hasn't worked here in 3 months. You mean to tell me no one has been submitting products for 3 months?" He's livid, and it's clear that I'm now in the path of his rage. "Why hasn't anyone been handling this?" Everyone's kind of just looking around, and the office manager, let's call her Karen, starts shifting the blame onto me, since technically Katie was in my department. Once the finger pointing started, I was prepared to defend myself. Well, Karen, I thought you were the one who was in charge of managing and keeping track of every employee's role. So Karen replies, I am, but you knew this was an important part of our sales and marketing. I reply with, the week before she was let go, didn't you specifically get all of her passwords and a complete list of all of her tasks? Karen replies, yes. She's clearly concerned with where I'm going with this. And after she was let go, did you communicate to me that those tasks were now my responsibility? Karen, well, no, but I shouldn't have had to. Me, but you're in charge of delegating tasks and making sure all work is assigned to employees. Are you implying that I was supposed to know that you had a list of tasks unassigned? Why would I assume that you didn't delegate those to another team member when that's an essential part of your role? Needless to say, Karen was very annoyed with me, but I wasn't taking the fall. They didn't ask me to curate events. Karen handled that, which got them to hire another person very quickly because it was too much work for her on top of her other duties. The story of me and the new girl needs its own post, so I'll end this one here. Part 2. So we left off that CEO found a replacement for Katie shortly after Karen, the office manager, started doing Katie's job. Since I didn't know the replacement from before and was training her, let's call her Susie, they were all of a sudden totally fine with me meeting regularly with Susie to help her curate events, as well as provide new product options for her. Unfortunately, CEO used this to prove how awful Katie was, since after several months of Susie taking over, there was a nice boost in sales, especially for the newer products. Susie was in her early 40s and truly doing this job for fun. Her husband's salary was enough to cover their bills, but all her kids were in school and she wanted to feel productive. She had a lot less to lose than I did or Katie did, since she wasn't relying on this income. Very quickly, Susie realized that the office was run like a total crap show, with the CEO changing his mind every other day about how to handle tasks. I had another trainee that was helping me onboard products, and we were manufacturing new items so quickly that it was nearly impossible to get every new product into an event, which is what we were tasked with. So Susie and I decided to meet with CEO and Karen to go over realistic expectations and how best to handle our workload. We tried explaining that with the delays at port, we couldn't add the new items because anything that was out of stock was pulled from events, and that meant a different in-stock item wasn't being featured. CEO and Karen make it seem like they get it, but they truly don't. During the time that Susie began working there, I had 2 family emergencies several months apart. First, my cousin, 15 female, who wasn't from the US, had been working at a camp in the US over the summer and was spending her last week before she flew home with her grandparents. Her grandparents lived about 2 hours away from where I worked in traffic. I get a call from my dad. He's absolutely frantic. Cousin's grandfather had been rushed to the ER and she's now alone in their house and needs to leave for the airport. She's very distressed and they are nervous about her going to the airport alone. I tell my dad that I don't know if I can. Call the rest of our family first, and if no one else can do it, I'll go get her. About 15 minutes later, my dad calls me back. No one else can go get her. It's also important to note that I worked right near the airport where she was going to, so even though round trip would take me about 3 hours if I was lucky, once I dropped her off, I'd be able to come back to work pretty easily. I tell my boss there's a family emergency, that I'm clocking out and I'll make up my hours in the evening if necessary. I drive to pick up my cousin who's barely holding it together. I'm trying to calm her down, but she's so worried, especially since she knows that she will likely be on a plane when we all find out if grandfather is okay. With all the craziness of that morning, she hasn't eaten, so I took her to get some food for lunch and for the airport, which added a bit of time to the whole trip. I ended up back in the office about 5 hours later. It was now around 4 in the afternoon, but I was planning on making up that time. I come back in, and Karen is clearly annoyed with me and wants an explanation as to what happened. I was young and naive and thought explaining the situation would get me some sympathy. Several months after that, I got a call from my mom late at night. My uncle, who had been battling cancer, isn't going to make it. He has a DNR, but they're keeping him on life support for about 24 hours to give everyone a chance to say goodbye. I was the only person in my immediate family living in the US, so it was really important to me that I go see him. I call my work and tell them my uncle is about to pass away. I'm going to pay my respects. I'll be back on Monday. This was a Thursday night. I'll add that I didn't have anything time-sensitive due for work and told them to text me if they had any questions on Friday. My boyfriend comes with me so I don't have to do this whole trip alone, and we drive through the night to get to my uncle who is in a hospital a few states over. I get to spend a little time with him on Friday, and we did a family call with him that seemed to have lifted his spirit. He wasn't fully responsive at this point. I had a friend who lived between where my uncle was in the hospital and back home, so we stayed there Friday night. I wasn't ready to head home just yet, and Saturday night he was still breathing, even though he was off life support, so we ended up driving back to see my uncle. I didn't realize that he was off of life support at this point, and my boyfriend and I were in the room when my uncle passed. Needless to say, it was extremely emotional. The service wasn't going to be for another week or two, and he was being cremated, so we weren't able to stay and wait for that. We ended up on the road about 2 to 3 a.m. Sunday morning and found a hotel to crash for 6 hours before driving home. I arrived at work on Monday and I was a total wreck. Between watching my uncle pass and the lack of sleep, I'm barely keeping it together. I must have gone to the bathroom to cry every other hour. Well, the CEO decides Wednesday is the perfect day to meet about my job performance. He has a whole meeting with me about how people who make it far in business don't put their family first, and he's just about had enough of my family emergencies. I'm completely speechless since I wasn't expecting such a harsh reaction, and I meekly reply, "Okay." Keep in mind, I only missed one day of work. I regularly stayed late and came in early, but after our little chat, I was done doing that. I was going to be graduating from college in about 2 months and had finally had a strong enough resume to look for other work. After graduation, I asked CEO for a raise to go from $16.50 to $20 an hour. I knew we could negotiate and meet in the middle, but I was appalled when the response was, "We can do 17." I explained that I now had a degree, had been working there for 2 years, and at minimum $18 was standard for a post-grad. They finally agreed to that, but I was already salty after the family talk and was looking for jobs elsewhere. During all this time, Susie and I are using our Google Chat to coordinate things for work and maybe slightly complain about CEO and how he would tell us to do one thing, we'd explain why that wouldn't work, then he'd push us to try it. It would fail, and then he'd be annoyed that we didn't push back at his suggestions if we knew it wouldn't work. Again, I was young and stupid, and it didn't really occur to me that my work would be able to read those chats. We never straight out called him an idiot, but we definitely complained a lot. The company is having a hard time functioning since I'm not putting in overtime anymore. This meant that everyone I delegated tasks to often spent time doing nothing during the day while I prepped the work they needed to do. I used to come in an hour or two early and stay a few hours late so that come 9 a.m. I could meet with everyone on my team to delegate tasks and do any training for the new backends we would be using. I was missing work randomly at this point for job interviews, and between my department's productivity declining and missing days, I was put on probation yet again. At no point during this time did Karen or CEO have the sense to get my passwords, daily tasks, ask where I kept the trainings on my computer, etc. I have an interview for a great job that turned out to be a crap show much later on. I need to wait to post about it though since I'm still working there, and knew that if I missed another day at work, I may lose my job. I was penny pinching at this point, plus the new job wanted someone ASAP, so I figured I'd be okay financially if they did fire me. 2 days after the job interview that I missed work for, I get a call at like 9:30 at night from a number I don't recognize while I'm at the gym. I had been applying for lots of jobs and didn't want to miss a call, so I answered. It was CEO, telling me that he no longer felt I was a good fit for the company and they were letting me go. I knew I'd get unemployment, and it wasn't like I could argue, so I said thank you for the opportunity, and we ended the call. I then call Susie immediately to tell her what just happened. As I'm in the middle of speaking, she says, "Hold on, I'm getting a call from another number." You guessed it, it was CEO firing her too. I was getting unemployment for about 2 weeks before I started at my new job, which was actually a nice break for me since I hadn't really had time off in several years. I'm at my new job and I start getting emails from Karen. They want passwords, documents, etc. I tell them that everything was saved in my Google Drive and anything that isn't there, I don't remember. Karen then calls me to get me to verbally confirm that nothing was saved on my computer and it was all in Google Drive. So I said, yeah, that's how you ask these files to be saved so that everyone had access. I knew how stupid this was on their part because you always want documents like this saved to your computer so that you have the original, and sometimes Google Drive malfunctions. But I maliciously complied when they told me Google Drive was enough. Well, they didn't realize that when they deactivated my email, all the files that I was the owner of would disappear. They didn't have a clear list of my tasks and had an impossible time resetting any passwords since, per their request, all of the logins used my email address. How do you reset a password when the email used for login is deactivated? Anyways, I laughed myself to sleep that night. Am I the jerk for asking my parents for their entire estate if they want me to be my sister's guardian? I, female 23, have been told my entire life that if anything happens to my parents, I will be my sister's guardian. She's 33 and has some disabilities. She's currently living in a group home. The government pays for a good portion of the cost, but not all. My parents have made sure that they have accessed every resource available for her to make sure that she has as good a life as she can. We were visiting her this last weekend when they brought it up again. They're both reasonably healthy, but they both had health scares in the last couple of years. They once again said that I would be her guardian. I've been giving this a fair bit of thought. I have 2 older brothers. They're both married and established in their careers. They would be better choices than I am. I want to go see the world. I'm lucky enough that my job can be done from anywhere that I have access to the internet. When we went to dinner, I brought it up and said that I had 3 ideas. 1. They make all 3 of us her guardians so that we could split the responsibilities and the duties. 2. They leave their entire estate to my sister in a trust that will oversee her care. 3. They leave me their entire estate with the proviso that I become her sole guardian and take full responsibility. Minus sentimental stuff for the rest of the family, obviously. I thought this was fair since it's not like they're rich, and their estate will mostly consist of their house and the insurance policies they took out when they realized the long-term costs of care for my sister. They said that I'm trying to avoid my responsibility to my sister and that I'm greedy for trying to get everything. I had one last suggestion and they really hated it. I said that they were welcome to cut me completely out of their will, but that had to include guardianship of my sister. They could leave everything to her and my brothers, but that meant I would be completely free of responsibility for her care. My dad got really angry, and my mom was crying when I left. My brothers both called me to say that I was being a jerk for springing this onto my parents, and that I was being greedy trying to keep them and their families from getting anything when our parents pass on. I asked both of them if they wanted 100% responsibility for our sister in return for the entire estate. I volunteered to sign away everything to them. Neither of them took me up on the offer. Not the jerk. Love how your brothers are mad because you're calling out their BS. So your parents want you to put your entire life on hold to care for your sister with no actual benefit? Why would you do that? I mean, yes, it's not your sister's fault, but it's also not your fault. Split 3 ways is fair. Yeah, it's super telling that both brothers had nothing to say when OP basically called them out on their crap. It's good that she's being rational and not letting her family members guilt her into getting their way. Not the jerk. So your brothers want 1/3 of the estate, but you do all the care? Pfft, stand your ground. Guest spent forever leaving the room after checkout. Now she's spending the night in jail. Guest had been staying with us for a while, paying cash daily, always paying late. But I only really work afternoons and don't ever hear about it. Come in this afternoon at 3 and see her name on the checkout list. She never paid for the room at all today. So I go over to her room and talk to her, and I tell her that if she can't pay for the room right away, she has to leave. She gives us the usual sob story about her brother coming to pick her up from a city hours away, and she doesn't know why he isn't here yet. So I play nice. I tell her that if we're talking about a few minutes, we can wait. Otherwise, she needs to leave the room. I gave her a full half hour because this was effectively the first warning. I go back. This is about 3:40 now, and I knock. No answer. Knock again. No answer. Knock a 3rd time. No answer. So I open the door, and she's laying out on the bed, totally asleep. She wakes up after I yell at her and goes back to her routine of, I just need to call someone to get the money. I tell her flat out she needs to leave the room right then. Are you mad at me or something? I'm not happy with you. I told you a long time ago to leave, and you weren't even trying to. But I have so much stuff. I brought a cart to help you out, but you need to go now. I'm cutting out so much of the witty banter because it really is all that tedious. Can I? No, you need to leave. But I just need... Ma'am, it's already 4 p.m. No way. Yes way. That's funny. And you look so good with your hair. I've been growing my hair out and it's starting to look good, but I wasn't going to take that bait. Ma'am, you need to leave. And if I have to tell you again, I will be calling the police.
They're going to arrest me?
Probably not, unless you have a warrant. Or you could be an adult and start moving your stuff. I pointedly avoided saying, leave the room, because of the promise.
Well, okay, but first I need to take a shower.
No, you are not. If you wanted a shower before you left, you should have done it at 10 a.m., not 4 p.m. I pull out my phone and start dialing the non-emergency number. She goes off into the bathroom. I left since the police were now on their way. Took about a half hour for the cops to come in, and she tries to pretend she can't hear them. We can hear her talking clearly on the other side of the door. She tries to talk to them without unlocking it, and the cops get me to get the tool to open the security latch. One of these days, I'll make a tool that works better. She does ultimately open the door and talks to the officers. She doesn't see me at first, so she makes it sound like she didn't know it was so late and that she's just waiting for more money. Then she sees me.
Oh, he's right there.
Cop doesn't care. I already told him that it was too late to pay. We just want her gone. After all, she'll just pull the same stunt tomorrow. Guest nods and says that she'll pack her stuff, then closes the door on the cop and locks it again. Cop locks eyes with me. Yeah, I'm gonna take her in. I use the tool to get through the latch. It took an embarrassing number of tries, and the cops go into the room and arrest her for trespassing. Oh boy, did this sweet old lady with her high voice and the childlike attitude change into the grouchiest ogre I've seen in years. Cops had her out of the room and started pulling all of her stuff to go with her. You want a pizza with everything on it? You got it. This happened about 10 years ago when I was working at a pizza restaurant as a waiter. I'll not mention the name, but it's a very popular place in the US. This was in a small southern town and one of the versions of this restaurant that had a substantial dining room for a pizza place. Generally, I went out of my way to find my customers the best deals on their pizzas. I didn't believe in running up a huge bill to try and milk a higher percentage. Well, one day this changed. I was waiting tables per usual, and a customer came in with a very rude attitude. I'll call him Rudy. Among other things, he insisted I hurry up as soon as he ordered his drink and questioned why I, a male in my 20s at the time, was a waiter since waiting tables is a job for high school girls. I took this particularly personally since I had worked hard for this job and I was darn good at it. It came time for Rudy to order his pizza. He wanted to order a medium hand-tossed with everything. Now, I knew what Rudy meant. People had, and I presume still have, various terms they use for specialty pizzas. When someone said everything, or combination, or some variation, they meant a supreme pizza. Pepperoni, sausage, beef, mushrooms, pepper, and onions. Every other time, I would seek clarity and ask if they meant our supreme pizza. But not this time. This time, I thought it was time for some malicious compliance. Here's how it went. Me. You want one medium hand-tossed pizza with everything on it? Is that correct, sir? Rudy. Did I stutter? It's not a hard order. Yes, I want a medium hand-tossed with everything. Think you can handle that? Me. Of course, sir. I will have that right out to you. What Rudy didn't realize was supreme pizzas did not have everything. Not by half. In reality, we had almost 24 different toppings at this place. It's been a while, but off the top of my head, I remember sausage, Italian sausage, pepperoni, bacon, Canadian bacon, chicken, all kinds of stuff. So I went to the computer and began building one medium pizza with everything. I also made it a point to start from a blank base and not build from a supreme reconfiguration. Once I was done inputting this monstrosity, my shift lead noticed the ticket and came back to me and asked, Shift leader, OP, what in the world is this? Me. Customer asked for a pizza with everything on it, shift leader. Shift leader. You know he probably wants a supreme, right? Me. I double-checked and verified, shift leader. He told me multiple times he wanted a medium hand-tossed pizza with everything on it. Seemingly satisfied with this answer, my shift lead went back to the cooks and told them to make it. This thing turned out gross. It was so piled on with toppings, the cooks literally had to press it down. Because there were so many toppings, the standard amount of cheese did nothing to cover them like a traditional pizza should. It was effectively just a hot pile of meat and veggies when it came out of the oven. Once it was out, I put on my best professional smile and delivered the pizza to the table. I had to use 2 hands, it was so heavy. When he looked at his pizza, he did not have the volatile reaction I expected. It was more of a mix of confusion, disappointment, and bewilderment, and then stern rejection. Rudy. What is this? Me. Your pizza, sir. You asked for a pizza with everything on it. That's not what I wanted. I wanted a Supreme. Me. Sir, that's not what you asked for. You asked for a pizza with everything on it. At this time, I honestly expected him to fight more and demand to see a manager, but seemingly realized I had given him exactly what he had asked for. He just sort of begrudgingly accepted it. I asked him if I could get him anything else, and he said no. I left and I kept an eye on him. He poked around at a slice for a few minutes, but obviously found it unappetizing. The best part was when I got to bring him his ticket, with each of those toppings rang in individually. Rudy ended up being charged $45 for one medium pizza with everything. I was like the cat that ate the canary the rest of my shift. I hate to disappoint anyone who may be wanting a huge fallout, but the man had effectively resigned himself to his fate. He paid the bill without incident, though he did stiff me on the tip, as I had expected. I never saw the man again. I later told my shift lead the full story. They laughed and acknowledged the guy deserved it, but told me not to make a habit of that, to which I agreed. Am I the jerk for taking in my cousin and supporting her against her parents' wishes? This happened recently, but the situation was building up for a while now. My cousin, Anna, who's 19, called me, 29 male, in tears, asking if she could stay with me for a while. When I told my wife, she had no hesitation in saying yes, because we both know the situation and left to go pick Anna up. The situation is this. For her whole life, Anna has done what her parents want. This includes how she dresses, when she has to be home, what she studies at uni. It's caused Anna to be very unhappy with life. Now, anyone who knows Anna knows the one thing she loves, and is very good at, is cooking. Her parents have decided that cooking isn't good enough and forced Anna to go to university. She just finished her first year in 2022, and unsurprisingly, she didn't do too well, mainly because she didn't want to be there. When she called me, she had a massive argument with her parents where she said she's sick of them living through her, and her parents basically told her to leave the house. When Anna got to my place, my wife and I told her she's welcome to stay with us indefinitely. Honestly, it's been great because her mood has definitely been lifted, and my daughters adore their auntie, and she adores them. Anna was with us for roughly a week, and then we got a knock at the door. It was my mom and Anna's mom, sisters. They wanted to talk to Anna. I asked Anna if she wanted me to kick them out, and she said it was fine. So there was my mom and aunt, Anna, my wife, and myself, discussing what needs to be done about Anna. Before anyone said anything, I asked Anna what does she want to do. She told everyone she wants to take culinary classes and find work at a restaurant. My aunt said that while Anna lived under her roof, that would not be happening. My wife and I said basically simultaneously, under our roof, she can do that. My mom then asks if we're really going to insert ourselves into someone else's family business, and I said of course, especially after Anna called us crying. I said I've seen Anna be unhappy for years, and now she finally has a chance to be herself. My aunt warns Anna that if she doesn't change her attitude, she isn't welcome back home, and this is her final chance. Anna starts to cry and says this past week she's been the happiest she's ever been, and she doesn't want to leave. My aunt looks at my wife and asks if she really wants Anna living with her. She tells her, we have a spare bedroom with an ensuite. We make more than enough money to send Anna to culinary school, and our kids love having Anna here. I chime in and say, our house is bigger, cleaner, and in a much better location than my aunt's house, and I make much more money than my aunt and uncle, so Anna is really getting a nice upgrade. My aunt gets up and says she doesn't need to listen to my disrespect, and my mom says that that was uncalled for. But I tell my mom, we all know I'm right. So, am I the jerk for taking in my cousin in this situation? Not the jerk for taking her in, but yikes at you telling your aunt, I make more money than you and I'm better than your filthy self in every way. Karen demands I pay her $20,000 hospital bills from having a baby. I, 28 female, just had my first baby 2 months ago. My sister, who's 33, had her third baby less than a week ago. Now to the relevant background. When I was 18, I came to France for an exchange program, and I just fell in love with the country. Then I decided to go to college here, met my husband, and just moved here permanently. My sister hated the fact that I left the US. She took any opportunity she could to talk trash about where I moved to, about the way we do things here, and about my husband and his family, etc. It got to the extent that I went low contact with her. When I had my kid, my parents came to stay with me for a month. My mom was very impressed by the fact that we paid nothing to have this baby. I didn't have to pay for my checkups, my mandatory lab work, the birth itself, the hospital stay, and some postnatal care that included pelvic floor rehab. I didn't even have to pay for a preventative dentist appointment. Apparently, the same thing in the US would have cost in the tens of thousands of dollars. Anyway, they left directly to my sister's. She needed help, had some health scare, and they planned to stay with her until she gave birth, and then for a while after to help with the kids. I called to congratulate her when she gave birth, sent a gift and all of that. She was upset even then. Then yesterday she called me, told me that her hospital bills were over $20,000 because of some complications, and that it wasn't fair that I didn't have to pay anything at all. Apparently, my mom kept bringing up the fact that it was free for me. She said since I didn't have to spend a cent, then I can afford to help her, so she too can afford to stay with her kid instead of going back to work ASAP. Here's where I might be the jerk. Even though I could afford to send her a couple thousand, I refused to do so purely because of how much she looked down on my decision to move to France and marry a Frenchman. So all I told her was, sorry, I can't help you. But you are free to come give birth here next time you have a kid. Even as a foreigner, it won't cost you more than $3,000. She called me a condescending jerk and said she will be going no contact with me. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your sister had 2 other kids. She knows the cost in the US. Your finances aren't tied to her in any way. She needs to keep her entitlement in her lane. Not the jerk. You're not responsible for others' medical bills. She's acting out of jealousy and selfishness. You can afford it is the dumbest reason to give a handout to someone who doesn't even deserve it. Malicious compliance cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is a story from someone I know. I've known this person for years, and while I don't work with them, I've seen this story play out more or less step by step. I know several people involved, but I'm going to tell it from the point of view of the person I know the best. So many years ago, this person, let's just refer to them as Person. Person got a really great job working for a Fortune 500 company. Not going to give any more specifics, but the company offered many benefits for their employees. They treated their employees like people and not like numbers. They offered a yearly raise to anyone who worked there. This was meant to do several things. First of all, it was meant to keep up with inflation so that employees wouldn't have to stress about money. I'm sure a lot of you know the struggle, waiting for minimum wage to be updated so you can start saving money to hold over till the next wage increase. No, the company was ahead of the curve. On top of that, when they did start hiring new employees for more, they increased the wage of anyone with that specific position by the same amount to keep older employees from earning less than newer employees. They offered many other benefits as well. Basically an awesome place to work at. Unfortunately, it's a small town, and the company wanted to expand that specific branch of operations. They couldn't do it here, so they chose to move out. They sold the branch office building along with the product that Person worked to another smaller company. When it was sold, the old company made the new company sign a contract which guaranteed that the yearly bonus would stay around along with several other similar benefits. New company wasn't around very long and ended up expanding as well. They did the same thing, sold the location and product to another company. Unfortunately, they didn't care as much about their employees and only treated them well because of contractual obligations. So when they sold the location and product, it did not come with a contract. New company did care a little bit about employees, but ended raises and all of that. They would listen to employee complaints, but that was about it. They weren't around long either before the scummiest company came in and bought them out. So new company comes in and buys them out and immediately starts changing policies and shifting everything up to make everyone's jobs harder. Person and their team members got used to it and kept going. Now here's the thing about Person. Person works on a team of specialists. There are only about 12 people on the team and a manager that's one of them. Well, there was. I'll get to that. This team doesn't require any special education or anything, but it does require a several-week training course and several months of acclimation. The product is extremely delicate, and the customers for this product are extremely demanding. They more or less require perfection, anything short, and no money. You must watch every single word that you say to these customers, or they might write you off permanently. However, this is an extremely valuable product, and the company makes a lot of money from it, or at least they did. Let's speed forward about 10 to 15 years. The company has only found new ways to treat their employees less like humans since they took over, and are somehow getting away with it. Turnover is high, but as long as they have high school grads looking for a job, then they can keep their building full. Unfortunately, person and their team have asked for a raise several times at this point, but they were always being turned down because they are earning at market value for their position. Looked it up, and market value is determined by a simple equation that takes into account other people in your profession at your experience level and with your job title within about 100 miles and calculates average wage for them. Considering the extreme specialty of this position and being located in a remote region, market value is determined by calculating the average wage of everyone on person's team. Basically, the company was saying, "Shut up, we aren't giving you a raise." Now, something to understand, person and their team members weren't that disappointed not to get a raise every year. However, they were now making only a little more than a new hire with the company. And there are other companies that do similar but less specialized work in the area, but start people out with a higher wage than person is making at this point. I literally knew high school grads with zero work experience that made more than person did. Now at this point, person has about 20 plus years of experience working the specific product, and the least experienced person on their team had been working in it for 12 years. The straw that broke the camel's back was an annual investors meeting that was streamed live to the entire company. Person, working on a small team, was invited to take a few hours off to watch the meeting. It was kind of a reward for them for performing so well. The company shot themselves in the foot with this one, though it was already starting to go south anyways, they just sped it up a little. So to put this into perspective for you guys, the company's total profit for that year, profit, not earnings, was a little over 1.2 billion. Out of that 1.2 billion, person's team of 12, and a company hiring tens of thousands mind you, these 12 people and a manager brought in about 480 million. That's a little over a third of the company's total profits for the entire year. For those that don't like math, that's about 40 million per person of pure profit. Person specifically earned a little over 60 million alone. The lowest earner on the team was over 20 million. Seeing that they were single-handedly responsible for over a third of the company's total profit for the year, the entire team got together and demanded a raise. The manager actually put that in before they even said anything. Even their manager thought it was wrong. They demanded $20 an hour. They actually only wanted half of that, but since they were being lowballed and completely unappreciated by the company for the work that they did, they put in a higher number. By the way, $10 is about the amount they would have been making with their yearly bonus had it never been discontinued. As you might expect, the company, being money hungry, came back with the same response as usual. Didn't even try to negotiate. They asked several more times over the course of a few weeks, threatening to quit if they didn't get a raise, and the company basically just said, "Go on, anyone can do your job." Cue malicious compliance. They didn't all quit, only 3 of the 12, which if you've been keeping up, would add up to an average $120 million over 1 year. But that's not all. Actually, what they did ended up turning out even worse for the company. The rest of the team all agreed to only work their minimum requirements. The company had minimum requirements that everyone had to meet. This team, up to this point, being proud of the work they put in, consistently exceeded the requirements many times over. They would compete to see who could perform the best. The lowest earner on the team often exceeded minimum requirements by 3 times over. At the end of the year, the company had to painfully explain to investors why their highest earning department was now performing at less than half what it did the previous year. They came up with some stupid explanations. They still refused to give a raise though. Instead, what they decided to do was raise their minimum requirements. At first, the team kept up, but eventually, out of aggravation when their constant requests for a raise were denied, about half of the team requested transfer off. They were transferred to other departments and replaced with brand new employees, the most experienced of which had been with this company for about a year. The new employees struggled to keep up with the minimum requirements, which kept getting raised to meet stockholder expectations. Eventually, original members on the team had either quit or transferred to another department, even the manager. This left the team with only new employees who had absolutely no idea what they were doing. They completely alienated the vast majority of their former customers almost overnight, and if that wasn't enough, because they could not meet the extremely high demands of the company, still only a fraction of what the original team was performing, they were either let go or transferred to another department and replaced after only a few months on the team. Even hiring several times the number of employees on that team did nothing. When they reported an earnings of 80 million from that team, the company got so fed up with it that they just sold the product to another company for an enormous loss. Unfortunately, this isn't one of those "the company drove themselves out of business" stories. but I still think it's pretty funny, and I like to tell it to all of my new friends. I also use it to warn anyone who might be considering going to this company to work. Honestly, you'd think that if someone earns that much profit for your company, you'd at least try to keep them around. The customer is always right. About 9 years ago, I worked at a food service job within a retail store. The job was absolutely horrible, as I got written up for anything and everything I did. If I took my breaks, write up. If I didn't take my breaks, write up. I called out once with a doctor's note saying I absolutely could not work as my illness was highly contagious. Write up. This was my first time ever calling out, and I gave 48 hours notice. The second and last time was for my grandma's funeral, which I had requested off and was denied. I was written up then too. Any excuse my supervisor could find to write me up, he did. Being in high school at the time, I took this very personally and assumed that I had done something wrong. I worked there for 2 years, taking each write-up as a learning opportunity. However, I finally reached a point where I recognized that it wasn't my fault and the malicious compliance began. In this job, there were add-ons, and these add-ons came with an upcharge. I had customers complain to me constantly about not wanting to be charged extra, but normally they would just pay it and move on. One customer, however, refused to pay for the add-on but wanted it anyway. I pointed to the sign which said that it would cost extra and tried my best to politely explain to her that I can't give it to her without charging her. She demanded to speak to my manager. I happily called the manager over, as at the time the leader was also my area supervisor. Each day there was an overall leader which would cycle, but each department had their own supervisors as well. I'll call him Bob. Bob was employed through the retail store specifically. Regardless, I thought that surely Bob would have my back, as he knows the most about the rules that I had to follow. I was very, very wrong. After listening to the customer, Bob proceeded to yell at me in front of her, stating, "The customer is always right, and you are not paid to argue with her. Give her what she wants, and do not charge her for any of it." He also informed her that I would be written up for this, and I was. From that moment on, whenever a customer complained about having to pay for an add-on, I didn't charge them for it. If they demanded their items for free, stating that they didn't like them or had a bad experience in the past, I gave it to them for free. After all, the customer says that they shouldn't have to pay for it, so who was I to argue? Of course, he meant that I shouldn't argue to the point of the manager being called, but he didn't specify, and I didn't want to be written up for it again. Nor did I care to follow a "do as I mean, not as I say" policy anymore. It didn't take long for the people who worked in the actual retail store to learn that they could also get add-ons for free if they complained about it, as at the time they were ordering, they were technically customers. Since each add-on cost between 60 cents to $1, and most customers wanted more than one add-on, the company was losing an average of $2 to $3 per transaction on the add-ons alone, not even considering the customers who got their entire order for free. Of course, $2 to $3 doesn't seem like much, but it was enough to catch the attention of my district supervisor, who I'll call Ann. Ann was employed by the food service company, and her job was to oversee the branches that were inside retail stores. Ann was very nice and respected the employees who worked with her company, regardless of if they were employed directly by her company, as was in my case. She first asked Bob about why our location seemed to be less profitable than other locations and less profitable than it had been a few months previously. He tried to pin it on me, saying that I was stealing from the company by giving my friends and coworkers free items. Ann, understanding how serious of an accusation that was, insisted on speaking with me alone. I expected to be fired, but she instead asked me why profits had gone down. I explained to her what Bob had told me about the customer always being right, and how I had been written up and didn't want to be written up again, so I followed his instructions word for word. For the first time since starting this job, someone took my side. She agreed that not charging for those add-ons would explain the loss she was seeing, and that how Bob had handled the situation was unprofessional and entirely against policy. Having Bob accuse me of stealing to protect himself was my last straw, and I put in my 2 weeks' notice the same day. HR had apparently taken notice to how Bob was treating me, as her exact words were, "It's about time. I'm glad you're finally standing up for yourself." With my consent, she altered some of the dates to make my end date be a week earlier than it should have been, since the schedule had not been written yet. To this day, I think of her as my guardian angel. Shortly after my last shift, I was informed by my friends that Bob no longer worked there as well. Ann was so upset with him that she called his supervisor and launched an investigation into his behavior. As it turns out, I was not the only one he would write up without a legitimate reason. They were also incredibly upset that he directly caused an unnecessary loss in profits. He could not blame me for it, as it was his words, and many people corroborated that he had said the same to them at one point or another. I was just the first to maliciously comply with his request, thus bringing his behavior to the attention of someone in a higher position than him. He was fired, effective immediately. Help my roommate rob us and make us homeless? After my son was born and my wife almost passed from pulmonary embolisms due to undiagnosed lupus eating her lungs, we finally managed to go on our first family vacation when my wife's health recovered. To preface this, we had to get a roommate to help with bills during this time, and a longtime friend was happy to help out and get a reasonable place to stay. Now, this is where Army Liar comes in. I had known this guy for almost 2 decades, spent entire summers at his family's place, and even lived with him on multiple occasions. I genuinely thought of this guy as my brother, cried in each other's arms type of stuff. But as dumb people do, he developed a massive ego after his parents paid his way through Colorado State University Pueblo. He started hanging out with the definition of giga-chads, and all of a sudden is nothing but politics and lying his butt off to get into the Reserves Officer Training Program for the Army at the college. This is important for later. Working out at the college with his bros, and generally being above hanging out with people who couldn't have a golden parachute from their parents. So Army Liar graduates, gets commissioned as an officer, and it's a shock when he wants to come hiking and partake of adventurous, generally wild college youth stuff. My roommate gets together with him, and through the wonders of the World Wide Web, we had a great time. I managed to decompress from my almost passing wife, as well as the struggles of being a new father. Now back to vacation. We visit family in Oklahoma. I had not seen my family in ages, and it's a great time. When we arrive back home, half the whole house is empty. There's a note from roommate that Army Liar helped him move all of his stuff out, and good luck. Understandably, this was a terrible turn of events. Any parent will tell you, you can't just plop some random in the now vacant room due to trust concerns and an infant present. Now I'm frantic at this point. Tons of our stuff is missing. Our marriage documents, birth certificates, lease, wife's 3DS, and more, all gone. I start blowing the roommate up, and Army Liar calls me. He proceeded to tell me he orchestrated it all because roommate was not really happy here and needed to move back to Central BFE, Texas from Colorado. I know, it's silly. I am obviously upset, but Army Liar was my chosen brother. Literally take a bullet for him. I explained that I'm missing all of the things I've noticed. This jerk has the nerve to say, "Yeah, not my problem." I was floored. He had spread some BS about me treating my roommate badly to his whole family, and they stopped talking to me. These are people who essentially raised me, housed me, and who were better parents than my own. I'll confess that I did something then that I was not proud of at the time. I told Army Liar that if he won't at least help me get my things back, I would have to contact his army supervisor and explain how he essentially just helped to rob me. He laughed and told me to go right ahead. In the end, I caved and I didn't do anything. I was too mentally and emotionally exhausted. My wife was crushed, and my son was upset by our constant crying and worrying about how we were going to pay our bills. Ultimately, we lost our place and were forced to attempt moving back in with my parents, which was not a solution because my mom is a terrible human and had filled every available space with foster kids to game the state for money. We lived out of our car until I found a temp job in Houston, which ended and decided that they were done with the project I headed and terminated my position after telling me I would be moved to salary. Back to living in a car. This was the darkest time of my entire life thus far. I finally landed a stable job back in Colorado, was able to get counseling and rebuild our life in a way that depended on nobody but myself. Happiness actually came back into our lives. My 2-year-old son would never remember this darker period, and I made friends who put Army Liar to shame. But what's this? I hear from some old friends that Army Liar dropped them like old garbage and they missed him, wondering if I knew where to find him. And find him I did. Turns out that Army Liar got married and was traveling the globe as an Army officer, strongly exuding the 10 yards of my stuff don't stink vibes. I remarked to one of my good new friends who just left the Navy that I couldn't believe they gave Army Liar a security clearance with all of the things Army Liar had done in the past, which would disqualify such a clearance. My friend told me that Army Liar most likely lied and had his new bro friends do all of his interviews, because if the Army found out, they wouldn't have cleared him. Cue to the gears start turning. Turns out it's incredibly easy to get in contact with people who care in the Army. I talked through Army Liar's complete past, leaving nothing unsaid. I threw my own dignity to the wind and spilled every illicit detail of the shenanigans we were involved in as 18 to 23-year-olds, including the previous mentioned relaxing hiking trip, the one he took after his swearing in. Needless to say, guess who should pop up on my LinkedIn feed as transitioning out of the Army without a listed clearance? Now Army Liar and his wife live at separate addresses, and I'm sure that has nothing to do with forwarding his past full of legally questionable deeds to her good Christian cell phone number, but we will never know. I now go look at his obviously depressed face on LinkedIn anytime I'm feeling down. Don't ever let people convince you to forgive and forget. Burn those bridges down. They deserve it, and I promise it will be the best feeling you have ever felt. I know it was for me. Am I the jerk for saying my husband's friend cannot stay with us? Backstory. I'm 30, female, and my husband, who's 35, he has a friend, and she's 25. She came to stay with us over New Year. We live in London, and she's from Finland, and had come to the UK for a month with the last 5 days of her staying here with us. She got sick on day 3 with a cold and decided she was not well enough to fly home. Fair enough. 5 days later, she is still here, apparently had an open-ended ticket. I had my brother and sister-in-law due to stay with us a week after her originally leaving date, but she was making no moves to book tickets home or give us details of flights. We were supposed to get her to the airport. Husband and I were both frustrated at this point at a number of issues. 1. She kept reorganizing our living space to suit her. She has ADHD, and apparently how we had things arranged irritated her. 2. I cooked every night. She picked at the food and didn't eat, but sent my husband out at 11 p.m. for noodles because that's what she liked. 3. She kept one-upping me in conversation, and it felt like she was trying to show herself as a better version of me to my husband. 4. She didn't offer to pay for food or help clean up after herself. 5. We had no personal space. She was sleeping on the sofa all day and then up watching TV all night, so we had no space to relax ourselves after work. I finally had enough and nicely reiterated we needed her gone as we had visitors coming and our home wasn't big enough to house everyone, but in all honesty, I feel she would have just kept staying and staying if I hadn't pushed it. Husband was reluctant to talk to her about this as he was worried she would twist what happened and he would be ostracized from their mutual friend group. I have no such issue as it's his friend group and I'm not particularly involved in things they do. It was a very stressful time for both of us, but things went back to normal after she left. The problem is that my husband has just approached me asking if she can stay again in the summer while she attends some events. I've put my foot down and said no, and he says he will look like a jerk as she has nowhere else to go and can't afford a hotel, but I don't want a repeat of earlier this year. We are currently disagreeing on how to handle this, and I need an outside perspective that I'm not overreacting. Edit to add. Okay, so this is being asked a lot. No, I don't believe there's any sort of emotional affair going on. I had suspicions before she came to stay and confronted my husband and talked things out with him. I was satisfied that this is not that. However, I believe this friend likes playing the damsel in distress. She can't work due to medical issues and says that she lives with roommates in Finland in a bad living situation, but can't afford to move out. All the guys in the friend group have been sucked in by this and will support her, sending money and gifts. It's an online friend group that meets in the UK in person once a year. The ladies of the group seem to see right through this. I would love my husband to cut this girl out, but he can't do that without cutting off the rest of their friend group, which he doesn't want to do. I'm happy to be the bad guy and be blamed for why she can't stay. I just don't want her in our home again because it's 100% sucked the last time. Not the jerk. Why does your husband have a female friend a full decade younger than him, and why is that female friend so competitive with you? And why is your husband so afraid to be direct with his friend? So many questions that all lead to me thinking that you have a husband problem, not a husband's friend problem. Exactly. You hit it right on the head. I didn't want to mention the age thing, but I find it relevant because it's perplexing. Like, why is the husband running out at midnight and getting noodles for this person? Why was he willing to engage in a fight with his wife over this person staying with them? Why is he walking on eggshells with her in regards to telling her she can't stay? It's weird. Not the jerk. No. For all the reasons you listed, she can't stay. You might want to inquire as to why your husband is more concerned about her than he is about you. The notion that had you asked her to leave the first time when you had other guests coming and given her terrible entitled behavior, it would have resulted in your husband being ostracized by a friend group is ludicrous to the point of not being credible. Why did your husband, in fact, not want to ask her to leave? Show him the list, tell him that not only can't she stay, she can't walk over the threshold of your house. Am I the jerk for telling my husband I hate my Valentine's Day gift? So for this Valentine's Day, my husband and I agreed that we weren't going to get each other any gifts and just focus on quality time together. My only exception was that he gets me flowers for the day. Nothing expensive or crazy, just a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite flower. I've always been vocal about my desire for flowers once in a while and try to make it easy for him to understand what I want. He doesn't get me flowers for our anniversary, my birthday, or any other special day of the year, and I just really wanted flowers for Valentine's Day. The day came up and we go out to eat and do other fun stuff, but the whole day I was waiting for him to surprise me with flowers. Instead, at the end of our dinner, he tells me he has a surprise and it ends up being a pair of earrings. They weren't really my style, but I still tried to be really grateful for what he got me. When we got home, I couldn't hold it in anymore and I asked my husband about the flowers. He said he didn't get them and I responded by saying I would rather have them than these ugly earrings. I will admit my words were really harsh, but I'm really tired of him not listening and ignoring what I really want. So, am I the jerk for telling my husband I hate my Valentine's Day gift? Edit. Since Reddit won't let me respond to any of the comments, I just want to make some clarifications. I paid for our activities and he paid for the dinner. I also did explicitly say I wanted flowers, which is why I said it was an exception to our rule. I didn't get him a gift because we both unanimously agreed that we wouldn't exchange gifts. I even showed him a bouquet of daisies at the grocery store that were around $15 he could get me. I got so angry because flowers were the one thing I've been begging him to get me since the beginning of our relationship, and he's only gotten me flowers once. Another edit, since a lot of people are confused. He came up with the idea of no gifts because we get each other gifts all year. When we talked about it, I told him that that was okay, and all I wanted were the flowers. He also agreed to that. I didn't get him a gift because he himself has said that he did not want anything. You were clear in what you wanted. He didn't listen, even though you made it really easy for him. And even though he tried, he didn't really do what matters in marriage. Listen to what your partner needs. That is frustrating after a while, and therefore I can understand the harsh words. Some will say you are petty, but it's not about the present, it's about the fact that he does not listen to what you want or need, and he is just ignoring it. Not the jerk. To never get someone a small bouquet of flowers when they have requested it is so odd to me. You were straightforward in communicating this with him. He doesn't have much of an excuse here. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. He knew darn well that you wanted and expected flowers. He's a passive-aggressive jerk who brought out the worst in you, and now he's playing victim. You're the jerk. Couple agrees on not getting each other gifts for Valentine's Day. Husband still gets wife earrings as a surprise, and she gets him nothing. Somehow he's still the bad guy, and you all bash him. And you wonder why smart, successful men are no longer wasting our time with marriage. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for naming my adoptive parents instead of my biological ones? This is kind of emotional for me, so please be nice, even if I suck here. I, 26 female, am all set to finish my PhD this year. Some of my published work has recently gotten press coverage in certain circles, and an article was even written about it in my hometown newspaper. In an interview, I was asked about my family, and I provided a picture of me with the people I consider my real parents, even though they've never legally been my parents. That's what prompted the controversy. My biological family is extremely religious, and they kicked me out when I was 17. My grandparents let me stay for long enough to finish school, but it was rough. I was able to scrape by and cobble together enough scholarships for college out of state, but I had a breakdown early in my freshman year because I was so stressed out in a big city for the first time, and I had literally nobody. There was a tiny restaurant off campus that was cheap and quiet, and I used to go there sometimes just to get away, and because the immigrant couple who ran it were always nice to me. After the lady asked if I was okay one day and I broke into tears, they kind of just adopted me. They talked me through my breakdown and had me over for dinner and on holidays and treated me just like one of their kids. I helped them with some things around the restaurant while I was in school. Their daughters are older than me, but we're friends, and I'm an auntie to their kids now. These people had no reason to take me in. We're not even the same race. But they did, and I introduced them as my parents now, and they call me their daughter. Once I'm established in my career, I plan to chip in to help them retire. I have kept some contact with my biological family, and the relationship has improved with time as my parents have mellowed out, and several of my younger siblings and other family have left the religion or become much less involved, but I can't forget being abandoned. They've been wanting me to come visit for a while, but I haven't. When they saw the picture of me with my adoptive parents in an article, they freaked out. Their argument is that they raised me, and they already apologized for kicking me out, so this is very hurtful. I think I wouldn't be doing my work without my adoptive parents' intervention, but they aren't my legal parents either. A lot of my biological family and friends are split on the issue. Some say I should have thrown my biological parents a bone since reconciliation is happening slowly. Not the jerk. Forget biological for a second. Couple A kicked you out at a vulnerable age for no reason. Couple B scooped you up and showed you unconditional love. You are not wrong either way, but it's clear why you chose the way you did. Congratulations on your hard-earned education. Congrats on finding a true family. I think it's really sad that parents so easily discount serious emotional pain. They don't realize that the damage done may never be healed. They need to accept what they did and live with the consequences. Mother-in-law demands I sell my apartment and give her grandkids the money. My sister-in-law, Diane, was a nurse in the Pacific Northwest. She lived in a very high cost of living city. 15 years ago, she bought herself a small apartment in a new development. It took about 2 years to build. In that time, the price of apartments in that building went up by about 30%. She didn't sell it because it was perfect for her. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed with breast cancer about 2 months after she took possession. She really didn't want to move back to Minnesota, so she asked her family for money to keep up with the mortgage. None of them had the money, and her mom really wanted her to move back home. I was friends with her before I married my sister. Just friends, nothing more. She asked me for help. I bought the apartment off her. I took over the mortgage. I didn't charge her rent. I paid all of the taxes and condo levies. She got enough money from her insurance and a side hustle to live there. My wife knew we were helping her, but we didn't say anything about it because our mom was upset that she didn't move back home after her diagnosis. Diane passed away last month. She had a hard life for the last decade, but she was happy. When her mom got a copy of the will, she was furious. The apartment is worth a lot of money now. It's in a great building in a great neighborhood. She was expecting the apartment to sell and for there to be money to split up amongst all of her grandkids. Diane never married and never had kids of her own. Mother-in-law found out about the deal I made with Diane. My wife and I own the apartment outright. After we clear it out and get rid of all of her stuff, we're going to rent it out. The income it will generate will pay for our retirement in a while. And when we sell it, our kids will have a nice nest egg to help them. But now, my mother-in-law told everyone how we took advantage of her daughter in her time of need and we stole her apartment. And how Diane would be upset if she knew that we were not sharing all of the money from the apartment. It is really starting to bug my wife, and she's saying we should just sell it and help out all of the nephews and nieces. I showed her a spreadsheet of all of our costs for the apartment. If I subtract all of my costs and all of my lost opportunities for investment, when everything is said and done, the 8 nibblings might get $3,000 each. I said if she wanted, we could just give them each that much money to get her family to drop it. Her family says that's BS and we should sell the apartment and split it equally. I said I would be willing to do that in return for each of them paying 1/3 of the money I invested over the last 10 years. They don't think that's fair. My wife is upset and her family is upset, and I'm just trying to be fair to myself. I spent 10 years giving up other investments and toys for myself and helped out Diane instead, and now everyone is angry with me. Full disclosure, I knew it was a good investment. It wasn't fully altruistic. You're the jerk. Oh, look, another scummy landlord. This is why I will never trust anyone who owns property that they rent out. The only reason anyone does this is to take advantage of people. People like myself work our butts off for minimum wage, then we have to pay some sleazy landlord like you most of our monthly earnings just so we aren't homeless. It's just wrong on every level. My parents always told me growing up to never trust rich people or take advice from them. They wouldn't even let me go to friends' houses if they knew their parents made a lot of money. Now as an adult, I realize why they did this, so I'm the same way with my kids. If they want to go to a birthday party in a fancy neighborhood, not gonna happen. I will do everything I can to ensure my kids don't turn out like you, taking advantage of people who just need a place to live. If you have even 1 ounce of humanity inside your empty, broken soul, then you will sell this place ASAP and give the money to the rightful owners. Not only are all of them furious with you, but so is your own wife. Whenever everyone has an opinion on you, and you're the only one who thinks everyone else is wrong, you're the problem. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or everyone else? Please let us know. I'm just still in awe of that last commenter. I'd tell you to buzz off, but I don't think you know how. Disclaimer: names have been changed to protect the people involved. We've got me, I was 19 at the time. We've got Laura, general manager and both the sweetest and the best boss I've ever worked for. Ted, the manager, arrogant jerk with a major attitude. Once upon a time, I used to work for a small chain of diners known for their golden arches. I got hired shortly after graduating high school and had worked there for almost a year when Laura announced to our crew that Ted had been promoted to assistant GM. This made several people upset because Ted would go on to use his new authority to exchange favors for raises. A few weeks after Ted's promotion, I woke up on a Saturday feeling 50 shades of terrible, but I got up and did my morning ritual before work. When I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth, I saw that my face and neck were physically green, like Vlasic pickle green. But being 19 and terrified of disappointing management, I finished, got dressed, and went to work. I punch in and I head to the back to wash my hands, and Laura is the first to say hi. Morning, OP. Baby, what is wrong with you? I don't know, ma'am. All I know is I feel terrible. Baby, why ain't you call me? I didn't want to let you down. Honey, you are sick. Something really a matter with you. Laura pulled out her phone and called the nearest urgent care. Hello, I need to schedule your nearest appointment for one of my people. His name is OP. What's your birthday, baby? Now your address. Thank you, ma'am. He'll be right over. Miss Laura, I can't afford a doctor's visit right now. Don't you worry about that, honey. I'm going to take care of it for you. After a thorough exam and some blood work, the doctor prescribes me a trio of antibiotics and 4 days of bed rest. Can't remember what I had, sorry. So I called my store to speak to Laura after leaving urgent care. So the doctor gave me medicine and I'm supposed to take 4 days off. Okay, baby, I'm going double that for you. And don't you worry, I'll make sure you get paid for all of it. A few hours later, I'm laying in bed watching TV and my phone rings. Hello? Yeah, OP, where the heck are you? Is there a problem? You can say that. We're an hour into dinner, and your butt is nowhere to be seen. Did you talk to Laura? What the heck does she have to do with you not being here? Did you talk to Laura? I don't need to talk to Laura. Listen, if you're not on the clock within the hour, I suggest you start looking for other employment. So I did. Got dressed again, went to work just like Ted told me, and clocked in. And wouldn't you know it, Laura was the first person to see me. Baby, what are you doing here? I thought you was home resting. I was, but Ted called me a bit ago and told me either I come in or I'm fired. Did you tell him to talk to me? Yes, and he said he didn't need to. Is that so? Ted, come back here, please. What the heck is wrong with your face? Ted, OP is going home, and he's going to be home for another 7 days. I don't want to hear a word from you about this. Understand? The day before I was supposed to go back to work, I got a call telling me I needed to report to franchise headquarters for a meeting with owner, HR, and Ted. When I got there, I spoke to franchise owner, who informed me that Laura was so enraged by Ted's statement that he didn't need to talk to her about my condition that she called headquarters and told him everything. I was then subjected to the weakest apology ever delivered by a member of the human race. After what I gathered was a very serious conversation, Ted had agreed to transfer to the franchise's least profitable store, but not until he had apologized to me for threatening my job. A few months after Ted's transfer, we were informed that his store folded due to a lack of positive leadership. Apparently, his new employees were less than thrilled to have a jerk for a boss. Last I heard of Ted, he was a detailer for a local cab company. Laura, however, was promoted to regional manager for the way she had looked after her employees. They figured she could teach that to the other GMs. We're still good friends to this day. Am I the jerk for moving out of the apartment my parents bought for me? They did not buy it specifically for me, I just didn't know how to phrase it better. When I got into university, my parents purchased an apartment close to the campus so that I could live my way without having to deal with other people. I'm really not a very social person. It was great for 2 years, and I came out of my shell a little. I met other people like me and discovered that, unlike high school, university isn't horrible. I even met a guy. We both work at the campus store. My little brother graduated last year and got into the same school. Rather than stay in the dorms, he convinced my parents to let him move in with me. Well, they own it, so I had no say. I lasted 1 semester. Since he had an off-campus residence, my apartment became party central. I asked my parents to make him stop after talking to him didn't work. They said to loosen up. I think they know how to take advantage of my personality. I talked to the university and was able to snag a rare single room in the mature student dorm. I don't have a lot of stuff, so when we went home for Christmas, I took what was really important to me. My boyfriend, first one ever by the way, look at me, all social now, cleaned out my room and moved my stuff to student housing for me. When we drove back after New Year's, I dropped off my brother and then went to my new place. It isn't perfect, but it is pretty sweet. My parents called me and asked where I was. My brother had let them know I wasn't in the apartment. I told them where I was and why I was there. They were upset that they spent all that money to help me and I didn't appreciate it. I said I did, until they stuck me with my brother. Without me there, he's having a blast. Good for him. He's also missing a lot of classes and has been fined for noise complaints by the condo board, but that's not my problem. My parents are asking me to please move back in because my brother is in danger of being put on academic probation. I asked if I was allowed to bar him from having parties and stuff. He was part of the conversation and was upset that I was asking to be put in charge of him. My parents said he was allowed some freedom and that as his big sister, I should look out for him and not let him fail. I thanked them for the opportunity, but declined, and he recently had a party that the cops had to shut down. My parents are considering selling the apartment, but it's kind of a crappy market right now, I guess. I feel bad that they might lose money after doing something so awesome for me, and I feel bad that my idiot brother might have to take time off school to calm down. But I don't think I'm the jerk. They all do, though. Not the jerk. Your parents want to spoil their son, but blame you for the consequences of their crappy parenting. You are 100% right to wash your hands of it. Not the jerk. You're not your brother's mother. If your parents want him in a more controlled environment, they can have him live on campus, where he'll have to abide by the rules, and then you can move back into the apartment. Not the jerk. Your parents bought the condo knowing you weren't social and thought this would be a great solution. Even though it's your brother, if he acts worse than a roommate in the dorms, it makes no sense that this would work for you. If I understand correctly, you offered to move back in if he agreed to no parties. That's more than fair on your part. Oh, I can quit? Not without the final say I can't. At my last job, my boss, let's call her Kay, hated me. She turned everything into a competition. She mocked me publicly. She took credit for my work. She divulged my personal medical information in front of all of our coworkers. She was cruel, and needless to say, I avoided her as much as I could. So now that the stage is set, here's the context. End of 2020, lockdown blazing, and I just had my first baby. I was a nervous wreck my entire pregnancy, working from home and being extra careful. After maternity leave, which was disgustingly short by the way, I had returned to the office with some precautions set in place. My boss became crueler to me over those first few weeks back and suddenly announced that, regardless of any negative feelings towards it, she had decided we all had to attend this training in another state. Keep in mind that there were mandatory 2-week at-home lockdowns in place for anyone coming back to my state, but the boss fully planned on ignoring those lockdowns and demanding that we would all return to the office as soon as we got back. I was carrying a heavy workload and pulling a lot of the weight around the office, and I had some rank. So I felt fully comfortable expressing my deep concerns to Kay, telling her that it was peak lockdown season and that I had a newborn to worry about now. I expressed I simply didn't feel comfortable going in the middle of a global lockdown and asked if there was a remote training I could attend instead. She firmly, adamantly insisted there was no remote training and informed me that I could quit if I was that upset with her decisions. It's important to note that she insisted this for weeks, even claiming to have contacted the training organization to make sure. I decided on the spot that after that meeting, I would be quitting. But I needed to check my boxes first, which took me a few weeks to figure out. Sometime after this meeting and her incessant insistence that there was no remote training, it finally occurred to me to check with the organization putting on the training and ask them to clarify if there truly was a remote training or not. I did, and lo and behold, there was, and they had been offering it for months. I asked them to email this information to me. Now to figure out how to use this valuable information, right? Wrong. As soon as I stepped back into the office, Kay starts fake empathizing with me out of nowhere in front of all of our coworkers, saying she really wished she didn't need to force me to go to this training. So I said, if you feel so bad, let me go to the remote training. She looked at me in surprise and her face turned beet red. Before she could fight me, I pulled up the email with the information and read it aloud in front of all of our coworkers. No one said anything. They just stared, wide-eyed at her while she blubbered like a fool. Long story short, after pulling that fast one on her, I pulled her into a private meeting and gave my notice. She was horrified because, as I stated prior, I carried a lot of the work around the office. But like she said, I could quit if I didn't like her decisions. Am I the jerk for buying my daughter a designer item she wanted and flaunting it in front of my niece? To provide some context to you guys, my 40 female, husband, 40 male, and I have 2 kids together. This has to do with my oldest, Maria, she's 18. My husband and I are very much upper middle class and live a very comfortable life. Still, this being said, we both agreed that we don't want our kids to grow up not knowing what hard work is. Both my kids have part-time jobs. If they want something, they need to save up their money to get it, as this way they would appreciate it more. Maria has been doing amazing in school lately. She just got accepted into her dream university to study computer science, just like her father and I studied. She's currently working part-time. When she was 17, she bought her first car with the money she saved from her part-time job. She pays her own insurance and everything. She's very independent and never asks my husband and I for anything, so we wanted to do something nice for her. She mentioned to me a while ago that she really wanted this bag and was planning to save up for it. The bag cost around $2,000 US. Knowing this, my husband and I decided to surprise her with it as an early graduation gift. She was very, very grateful for the bag. Last weekend, we went to my father-in-law's birthday dinner at his house. Maria wore her bag. We didn't think anything of it. My sister-in-law and niece, who's also 18, attended as well. I all of a sudden hear a bunch of shouting from upstairs, so I go upstairs to see what's wrong. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law follow me. Maria is standing outside of the bathroom, clearly upset. My niece had taken the bag from where we leave our jackets and bags, and Maria realized she locked herself in the bathroom. Sister-in-law tells Maria to stop overreacting and wait for niece to come out. I tell sister-in-law to tell her kid to open the door and give Maria her bag back. Sister-in-law refuses and doesn't see the big deal. I call my husband. He starts having a go at my sister-in-law after he finds out what's going on and grabs something to pick the lock on the door with. We get the door open and my niece is refusing to give the bag back because she wants it. My husband tells her to hand it over twice. She refuses, so he grabs it from her with force. Sister-in-law starts losing her crap, saying, "Do not snatch things from my daughter," etc. I tell her to buzz off and get her daughter under control. She calls me a jerk for letting my daughter flaunt her designer bag in front of her daughter. My mother-in-law took sister-in-law's side and said it was inconsiderate of Maria to bring the bag here when my niece doesn't have one to relate to Maria with. I called them all unhinged and my husband and I left. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law have been contacting my husband demanding that we apologize and that if Maria wants to wear expensive stuff around my niece, to make sure that we have one of whatever that is for my niece as well, since we're so well off. Not the jerk. These people are delusional. What did she think was going to happen? They'd just give up and let her keep the bag? Seriously? Also, the niece is in for a rude awakening if she goes to college. There will be well-off people around her who have designer things, and she won't be able to just steal them because she wants it. Not the jerk. I'd expect an out-of-control, poorly parented 8-year-old to lock themselves in the bathroom over a toy they didn't have. An 18-year-old pulling that kind of stunt? That's crazy. The only thing I would have done differently is threaten to call the police rather than physically taking the bag back. Because you are right, the behavior is unhinged, but it wasn't worth your husband getting into a physical altercation over it. If he had accidentally hurt her trying to get the bag back, I wouldn't be surprised if they would have tried to sue your family, especially since they seem to think that they're entitled to your money. Delete your files and leave. So I have a friend, Ted, who about 7 years ago was 64 years old and considering retirement. Ted worked in health analytics for a large metro health organization. He would look at patient data and see ways to improve patient outcomes and gain funding. Each month, he would email to the relevant department heads data and links for government grants or funding applications. 12 months prior to this, Ed got a new boss, Sally, who didn't appreciate what Ted did. Sally pretty much ignored Ted, except for simple instructions that all data and reports go to her and no one else. She would deal with it. The organization declares a restructure with lots of job losses. They are extremely determined to get this through. Ted is to be redundant. In a meeting, Sally tells Ted his work is useless and he is of no use to the organization. She says she hasn't opened one of his email reports in 12 months, and that clearly shows he doesn't matter to the organization. In 3 months, he will be redundant and receive a handsome package, over a year's pay. Sally was pretty rude to Ted, and HR asked her to leave. It's decided that Sally will no longer deal with Ted. The union was putting up a decent fight and slowing down the restructure. Ted makes the offer to HR that he will not fight the redundancy if they pay him 3 months sick leave, and after that, his redundancy. They agree, but insist that he do a full data clean for patient confidentiality reasons in the next 2 days, and then his sick leave starts. Cue malicious compliance. Ted backs up a copy, then rings IT, who deletes every file, all on his hard drive and not on a server. He was not so tech savvy, and physically destroys his hard drive. He also asks them to search through any unopened emails he had sent and delete them off the server. IT wipes every last trace of Ted from the system. Ted gave the copy of his data to the internal auditors on his last day. On Ted's last day, he also discovered that Sally didn't know he was going on sick leave the next day. She rings with a sweet-as-pie voice, saying,
Hey Ted, I need to look at those numbers you sent me as I can't find them. The auditors say we are 2.2 million short of funding this year, and you might be able to help out.
Ted replies, sure, but ring me tomorrow. Ted leaves and retires, happily ever after. Sally apparently could not find Ted's data in the coming weeks. Ted ignored her calls as he was on sick leave. The internal auditors investigated and found that Sally had cost the organization over $2.5 million in funding. At the same time, complaints came from department heads about Ted's redundancy. Someone forwarded Ted an email a couple months later from the CEO stating, after a brief conversation with Sally, she has decided to look for other opportunities. Am I the jerk for telling my friend she's losing friends because her world revolves around her kid? So I, 20 female, have a friend, let's call her Anne, who's 23. She got pregnant from a random hookup. The father didn't want to have anything to do with the baby, so she's a single mother. Her daughter, Kate, who's 2, is really cute. I love babysitting her, but she's all Anne cares about now. For example, she often cancels meetings with friends because of her. I understand that sometimes things come up, but this happens often, and she gives reasons like, Kate is really clingy today, or Kate really wants to go to the zoo. And even if she is there, her daughter is all she can talk about. She shows us a bunch of pictures, talks about her sleeping, eating habits, her diapers, her favorite songs, everything. And while I would be interested in them, if you don't stop her, she can literally talk about this for hours. And even if I try to change subjects, the topic of Kate comes up again and again. A week ago, we had a 2-hour-long coffee meet, and when I asked a server for some water, she said, Kate want Kate to drink more water. And then for the rest of the meet, it was all about how she wants to teach Kate to drink more water. Yesterday, I babysat Kate, and I stayed there after Anne put her to sleep. We started talking, and the topic of being a single mother came up shortly. She told me how hard it is to parent alone and how distant she feels from her peers. I tried to be emphatic because I understand that being a young, single parent is always challenging. But then she said how people show their true colors and listed a few of our friends who have been distant with her. She called them fake friends and jerks, which I didn't like. I told her that most of those friends wanted to be child-free and that maybe talking about Kate made them uncomfortable. She dismissed it and said that if they were true friends, they would love her kid just as much as her. I told her that she's having unrealistic expectations and that just because her world revolves around Kate, it doesn't mean that everybody else's does too. She got really upset and accused me of shaming her for being a single mother. I told her I'm just trying to point out that not everybody cares as much about Kate as her, and her constantly talking about her kid can be tiring. She got angry and told me to leave, so I did. Today I woke up with angry messages from our friends saying that Anne is a struggling mom and I should have shown her support. I feel bad about how I phrased it, but I don't think that I was being a jerk here. I do understand that Kate is a very big part of her life and that she wants to talk about her, but I think there's a healthy limit to that. I'm closer to Kate than most of our friends. Some of them never met her, so it's like hearing about a stranger's every little habit all the time. But tell me, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Unless you're drastically altering your phrasing for us here, what you said wasn't ridiculous. It was factual and valid. She pushed, and is pushing, her friends away by only having one topic of conversation and expecting everyone to be as excited about it as she is. She can join a mommy group for that. Boy, that was a big leap she took from maybe tone down the mommy talk to being shamed for being a single mom. They're barely related concepts. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for having no empathy towards my overly emotional wife by not picking her up? I'm 26, male. My wife is 23, female, and we've been together for 3 years if relevant. Lately, my wife has been emotional. Like every little thing sets her off. There wasn't a banana? She cries. No sugar? She cries. Missed her bus? She cries. I'd almost think she was pregnant, but we discovered after a year of trying to conceive that she's infertile. This was 2 months ago. She also recently had a baby start at her nursery, which also sets her off, so it's been a tough time. I've tried to be empathetic, but it's all the time tears. I'm so tired. Like each time she cries, I'll drop what I'm doing to comfort her, even if she calls me at work. She walks an hour to work after a bus journey. She leaves at 6:30 to get to work at 9:30. That's how long the travel is. I told her I'd drive her. She didn't want me to. I told her to take an umbrella and she forgot. She called me crying because it rained like I said it would. She asked me to pick her up and I said I couldn't because I had a meeting. She said, "I'm sure they'll understand." And truthfully, they have been understanding, but it's all the time, and I did warn her. I refused. She did get huffy, and when she got home that night, she wasn't crying. Shocker. But was mad and hasn't spoken to me since. But we haven't seen each other much as she gets home late and still has work to do, coursework, etc. I asked a friend who insisted I'm the jerk, but my wife texted me to say she's considering taking driving lessons in June, which I thought was a win, but she's apparently still angry. Am I the jerk? Edit. 1. I did want kids, but obviously I want to allow my wife to have her feelings on this. I do not want to grieve in front of her and her think I'm blaming her. Should she want to adopt or do IVF, I'm open, but should she decide to not have kids, then I will support her. I do not feel like it's my space to be upset here. 2. She got a hormonal blood test. For reasons other than trying to conceive, and we were told, due to a hormonal imbalance, she would not conceive, at least not naturally, and even through intervention, she will struggle. 3. If she drove, the journey would be 32 minutes. She's getting her qualification, so moving jobs is out of the question. Not that she'd want to, so she's looking into driving lessons. Shouldn't you be concerned that something is going on? Maybe she needs to check with a medical professional. OP said in other comments that she refuses therapy. Your wife's life sounds really difficult right now. She found out 2 months ago that she can't have kids. She has to commute 3 hours each way to work, and once she gets there, she's confronted by her infertility in a whole other way. On top of that, her partner is starting to lose patience with her difficulty coping with all that. Whether or not she has underlying chronic depression, she's certainly depressed right now, and she needs help. I hope you can see that, and I hope you're also taking time to process what her infertility means for you. Info. How long does it take to drive to her workplace? Would an Uber have been an option? She refuses to get therapy. How's he going to help her then? And seems like OP has been very supportive, and I'm not sure if the office is going to take it anymore. Like, hey boss, there's something really urgent I've got to do. I gotta go because my wife forgot her umbrella at home and needs me to pick her up. So no meeting for today, thank you. And the boss would say, OMG, no problem. Go ahead and pick her up and you will still have your job. Not the jerk. I know everyone is tearing you a new one, but let's be real. You also just found out that you can't have kids with her. You haven't said all this to her. You've been gentle, and you've been there every time for the last 2 months. Everyone will hit a limit when they're so exhausted from grieving and supporting their partner and not also receiving that same support. Again, I'm not belittling what she's going through. I think you're both going through a tough time, and while you need to support her, you also can't pour from an empty cup. I would suggest counseling to navigate what you guys are going through. I kicked my sister out of my house for throwing all of my food away. I seriously can't believe this is a thing, but my parents are really upset with me. My sister and I grew up together, but aren't very close. It really wasn't from any drama. We didn't have a big fight to cause distance, but rather just have opposite personalities and interests. If I had to describe my attitude towards my sister, it would be apathetic love. Like, she's my sister, so I want her to be healthy and happy, but we just unfortunately don't hang out, call to chat, etc. She recently received an opportunity to interview for a job near our hometown and reached out to see if she could stay with me for a week. My mother was ecstatic that my sister might be coming home finally. She moved across the country right after college and hasn't been back in almost 10 years, except for Christmas. She spends Thanksgiving with her in-laws, or the one-off birthday or business trip or vacation. I was more than happy to open my home up, thinking that we could maybe bond or deepen our relationship. It was all kind of awkward, but nothing horrible until the third night. I came home from drinks with my friends around 10 p.m., went into my kitchen for a snack, and realized that almost all of my food was gone. I'm not even exaggerating. I swear, 90% of my pantry was just gone. I asked my sister, and she told me that she was shocked I ate anything with preservatives and unnatural, and that I was poisoning my body. So she took it upon herself to throw away everything that she deemed unhealthy. Guys, I'm talking about so much food, both packaged and unpackaged. Even things like spices that weren't fresh were tossed. It was like someone had robbed my kitchen. I demanded that she pay to replace everything, but she dug her heels in and said that she was doing me a favor and that the way I ate was disgusting, her literal words. I know I'm biased, but my diet isn't even crazy. It's pretty much standard food you'd find at any grocery store. I was so upset, I made her pack up and leave, and she ended up having to take a cab about 30 minutes away to stay with my parents. My mom is absolutely devastated that we're fighting and insists that I apologize in order to keep the peace because she really hopes my sister will take the job and move back. I told my mom that if she wanted to lose not one, but both daughters, then she'd keep pushing me to apologize for something I feel I have a right to be upset about. My dad says that she's been crying every night though, and I love my mom so much, I feel like a huge jerk for being stubborn about the situation. Edit. To answer a few questions I was asked, yes, I did invite my sister out to drink with me. She declined, saying that she didn't like going to dive bars and wanted to stay sober because it was a work trip. I respected that decision, but I had already planned to go out with my girlfriends. It was a birthday. I did the math, and she threw away close to $1,000 worth of food. I listed some items in a comment below, but it included dry pasta, ground beef, pre-cut veggies in a container, juice, canned soups, rice, chicken broth, leftovers, and even bread, because it was white bread. This isn't even close to the start of my list. Not the jerk. Your sister was a self-righteous jerk and was lucky she only got kicked out. I would have been tempted to call the cops on that crap. Not the jerk. But OP, your parents are literally telling you that they care more about the sister who moved away than the one who stayed. Do with that what you will. Spices can be hard to find and expensive depending on your tastes, and the food alone would cost hundreds of dollars. Get that money. Karen calls security on me for watching a video on my laptop. I took public transport to my campus. The lecture portion is on Zoom and the lab is in person. I went to the campus library and realized I forgot my headphones. I left and found a semi-secluded picnic table outside to not disturb anyone in the library. The lecture started. A few minutes later, another girl sat down next to the adjacent picnic table with her book. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her glancing at me, and she sighed every time I spoke into the mic to ask a question. She asked if I could turn down the volume. I said sure, no problem. But then she kept complaining it's still really loud, and it's rude to play videos out loud in a public space. I explained to her that I forgot my headphones and I left the library, and that's why I sat here first. I told her I turned it down a little bit, but I still need to listen, so it's gonna be audible. The volume was at 25% of my Mac, if that makes sense. She asked if I'm really playing the I was here first card and said to go somewhere else since these tables are the only shady spot on campus. I said no, you can move. I'm ending the conversation now. She called me inconsiderate and muttered names under her breath when she left. Apparently, she complained to the security guy on the golf cart and that I'm being rude. He came over and said, "Next time, you need to move or go to your car." I don't have a car. He shrugged and said, "You're an adult now, and this is why you need to be prepared." I had frustration tears after, since confrontation is challenging for me, and I was already stressed for my exam. This is the first time I forgot my headphones. I'm just baffled how bothered everyone was. The tables were empty when I got there. Like, she could have left if it was that bad. Plus, it's not like sitting outside on campus is quiet. It's loud. There's tons of students walking and chatting. She could have gone to the library if she wanted absolute silence. A few of my friends said I should have just moved since you're automatically the jerk if you have videos on speaker in public. Am I the jerk? Edit for clarification. I was not in the library. I was outside, far away from classrooms and the library, at a shady picnic bench. It's a secluded area. I randomly stumbled upon it while wandering around, trying to find somewhere to go sit to not bother anyone. No one else was there when I sat down. Not the jerk. I understand the sentiment that no videos on speaker in public, and I would normally agree that you would be the jerk. But you forgot your headphones, and you calmly explained to the other girl the situation. And goodness, I can't stand people without empathy. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for how they handled this or not? Please let us know. Why don't you tell someone who gives a hoot? Alright then. This happened back in the day with a teacher I used to work with who taught a class of adult students who took a very high-stakes exam. The high-stakes exam, unless you passed this, you couldn't qualify for scholarships, some aspects of financial aid, etc., was multiple choice, and I was part of the campus proctoring team. This particular teacher didn't like me very much, and I was fine with that. We had different personalities, and that's okay. This was an important test. This exam is an important piece of data that the county community college system uses to compare its success to sister schools across the country, and even across the state. It's not an ACT or SAT, but it's the junior college version of a GRE, basically. It just happens to be administered in this particular course, which is required by all who attend that major in pretty much anything. So anyway, during the actual test, it was my job to make sure the classroom was fully functional. Math help was covered up. This included covering up the 4 quadrants that were labeled in the 4 corners. The teacher, we'll call Captain Cheat, was okay with most of my suggested changes. Before the kids took the test, I made sure we covered up the 4 quadrants, but Captain Cheat was determined to have the 4 letters in the 4 corners up still. They were literally framed posters with fancy decorated letters, A, B, C, and D. I was like, I don't see how this could help, but sure. Anyway, the students started walking in, looking at the sparse walls, seemed panicked for a second, then relieved to see that there were still the letters up. This was my first clue of weirdness, but should have really been my second. During the test, I saw the teacher walking around the room looking at the kids' answers. I noticed a very interesting pattern that, if you didn't pay attention, you would miss. No words were spoken. He would walk past a student, the student would look up at the teacher would look away into the middle distance. The student would look at the same middle distance, then bubble in an answer. It was a little weird, but a very consistent pattern. I then paid a little closer attention and saw that some students were better at hiding what the teacher was doing than others. Some kids didn't look where the teacher looked, they just knew what to bubble somehow. Then it happened. A student took their pencil, pointed at a bubbled-in letter, looked at the teacher looked at me. I looked away and saw the teacher looked intently at his picture of the corner of the room that said D. The kid then clearly changed their answer to D, even mouthing D, kind of whispering it to themselves. When testing was over and every single student handed in their Scantron and left, I immediately approached the teacher saying, "I can't believe you. Impressive, but disappointing. You're literally cheating these students out of an education. You either have them retake this test without your magic signs, or I go to the board." He responds, "Why don't you tell somebody who gives a hoot? Hashtag good luck proving it." Yes, this dude cringingly said hashtag. Enter malicious compliance. The first part of Captain Cheater's comment set me off, and at that point, honestly, I wasn't even going to go ham on this guy. This is 100% due to the additional cringe factor of saying hashtag. Now I will tell somebody who gives a hoot. The provost. The provost indeed gave a hoot. So anyway, I tell the provost, and Captain Cheat is not just brought before the board, but is put on administrative leave instantly. He wasn't sent away in handcuffs or anything, the stakes weren't that high, but this was an exam that affected a lot of people's money and in turn, lives. This guy looked particularly upset, more so than usual, and I know for a fact that he hasn't worked at the university level since, based on his LinkedIn that says he's working at a Target warehouse. Entitled parent parks in my driveway. I own a house a couple of houses down from a school, so this was bound to happen eventually. When it's time for the kids to go home, my street is lined up bumper to bumper with parents to pick up their kids. The sidewalks are full of families who walk all the way to their cars. I often have to pick up balloons, snack packaging, old homework worksheets, and general garbage that the kids drop. If you're trying to get home around this time that school lets out, there's no way you're going to be able to get there before the blockade of parents is gone. This has been a problem the few years we've lived here. There's two spaces the kids let out. My street, which is a small cul-de-sac with the school at the top, and a main road that's open all the way down to a baseball park with a wider road to allow street parking and two-way driving. Obviously, if you can't find parking, the tiny residential road isn't the way to go. There are 3 cars at my home. My car, my roommate's car, and my husband's utility van, which he parks on the road to avoid blocking our roommate since she's frequently in and out. Fridays, today, I work from home. So when I finished work, I poked my head out the window to look at my fruit tree I have near my driveway. It's spring. I keep excitedly looking for blossoms, and I notice a big white Buick SUV in the middle of my driveway, blocking both my spots for my car, which my husband was using since I was home, and my roommate's spot. Honestly, why would you park in somebody else's driveway? So on top of these entitled parents blocking up our small residential road, this person decided to take up a private residence driveway. I got on the phone with the non-emergency police line and took pictures of the vehicle and plate. Then I got my husband's keys and backed his vehicle up to block the SUV into my driveway, and I waited. 15 minutes later, the mom, bug-eye sunglasses, big old diamonds on her jewelry, and wearing athleisure as she comes around to hop in the driver's seat and smiles and waves at me sitting on my steps. Honestly, she probably thought I was the homeowner's kid or something because I'm in my early 20s rather than the homeowner. Entitled mom.
Hi, I hope you don't mind.
Me. You're trespassing. Why would you park in a private driveway?
Sorry, won't do it again. We were just leaving.
She was being really dismissive and avoiding eye contact despite taking the sunglasses off. Me. I don't care. You have no right to park in my driveway. I'm on the phone with the police. Entitled mom.
It was just for a second. I was just picking up my daughter.
Me. It doesn't matter. You don't live here. You don't park here. At this point, I realize the non-emergency police aren't going to pick up, so I hang up and decide to mess with her for a bit. She got in her SUV and dismissively waved at me, so I got in my vehicle that was blocking her in and waited, pretending to still be on the phone. She starts trying to back out of my driveway because there was a little gap between my utility van and my neighbor's car, but it was definitely too small for this Buick. I would like to point out this vehicle has a scuffed front bumper, so I had a feeling she has no spatial awareness outside of her backup camera. Every time she backed up, I honked, still pretending to be on the phone. She tried again, I honked again. She looked at my grass, and I was about to start recording her in case she tried to go through my front yard. I honked again. If she kept trying to back out and hit my big utility van, she would certainly lose. She gets out of her SUV and comes up to my van, recognizing she can't do anything without making it far worse for herself. Her face was visibly patchy from the distress, and she asked again.
Are you really calling the police?
Yes, you're illegally parked on my private property. That's illegal. I don't care if it's for 5 seconds. Don't do it. You don't live here. Her kid got out of the car, and I decided that was enough. So I waited for her to get back in her SUV, and I parked my van back in its rightful spot and let her out. After that, I called the school and gave them the license plate number. Nothing will probably come of it, but I don't think she'll park in someone else's driveway again anytime soon. I'll take the jerk points because she did have her kid with her, but you shouldn't put your kid in situations like this anyways. No overtime without management approval? Great. I was in my 3rd year of an accounting job I absolutely hated, but I also hated the industry as a whole and was essentially using the position to bide my time as I learned a new skill to eventually jump to an entirely new career. My boss at the time, who I'll call Tia, was the shining example of the specific flavor of toxicity that I'd found sinking its teeth into most of the accounting departments I'd worked in. Imagine the power trip of middle management plus the prestige of managing multi-million-dollar transactions. She was the first accountant for the company when it started and had become the de facto choice for a new highest position in the department every time the company's growth called for a departmental restructuring. The only thing I could determine was earning her these positions was her confidence and conviction in the ways she had determined things needed to be done, which C-suite just ate right up, even paying for her to get whatever training or certification she needed to qualify for the new roles presented to her. In the meantime, she had given me 3 consecutive annual reviews, scoring a solid 0 satisfaction rate each time, which was always enough to justify a 0% raise, but never enough to justify actually letting me go and putting me out of my misery. So at this point, I was fully checked out, especially after finding out I'd become the lowest paid employee out of 100, including interns and the front desk clerk. In the latest restructuring, Tia was not promoted to the new CFO role as the board wanted real experience, but was given a controller role while a new level of management was added between us. HR had also become its own department, no longer falling under accounting's purview. Tia didn't seem to like simultaneously becoming second in accounting's command while also losing control of HR. She convinced the company to send her to law school so she could eventually transition into some kind of Frankenstein-esque accounting/legal/HR position that would oversee essentially everything the company did outside of actual production. This required her to leave the office around 2 to 3 p.m. every afternoon to attend classes, making her unreachable until the evenings. The new management position that opened up between us saw 3 to 4 employees join and leave for greener pastures over the course of a year and a half. But the story takes place while I was under the only manager I actually liked, who I'll call Kevin. I could see him doing what he could to advocate for me while still being forced by Tia to treat me the same way she had previously treated me, and I could tell it made him feel awkward handing these decisions down my way. I respected his attempts to work with us, and he actually helped us create a functional and efficient department for a few glorious but short-lived months. Story. Suddenly, a bill was passed in the US stating that salaried employees making less than $40,000 a year would be eligible for overtime pay, taking effect later in the year. After 3 years of no raises, I was sitting at around $37,500 a year, making me eligible for the eventual overtime. Working in accounting, it's pretty much expected that you'll be working 50 to 60 hours a week, especially when closing out the monthly and quarterly and annual financials. However, after everything they had put me through, I was actively giving them as close to 40 hours a week as possible, only staying behind if we had gotten an important request towards the end of the day that Kevin begged me to take care of before leaving. I knew it would look a bit off if I suddenly started working a bunch of overtime after this change took place, so I planned on very slowly ramping up my hours over the preceding months to eventually take advantage of the extra pay. After 1 to 2 months, I was regularly putting in 45 to 55 hours a week, with most extra hours spent remoting into my home computer to practice programming and looking forward to the income this new workflow would provide me. I guess they eventually caught on as Kevin pulled me into a conference room and presented me with a contract to sign stating that I wasn't to work any overtime without Tia's approval. For reasons you'll see below, I quickly recognized this as a way to never have to work an extra hour for the rest of my tenure at the company. I signed it and immediately cut out all overtime, leaving at 4 p.m. that day as I'd worked through lunch. The next day, I stopped showing up early, started taking actual lunches, and could be heard peeling out of the lot at 5:01 every day. Kevin noticed my sudden lack of hours and tried to mention the contract not being in effect until the bill kicked in. I reminded him that we had a signed contract that failed to list a start or end date, so I considered it fully in effect. I could see the uh-oh realization hit, but he begrudgingly accepted the loss. I'll mention again that he was great, and this action had obviously come from Tia, and he was now stuck dealing with the repercussions the same as I was, so he really didn't fight me too hard on it. Later that week, an important client request came in around 4:45. He asked if I could stay behind to work on it, and I asked if he had Tia's approval. This was his second uh-oh moment, as unfortunately, due to her classes, Tia had become unreachable between 2 to 8 p.m. every weekday for the foreseeable future, and he didn't usually know he'd need extra work from me until after 4. Everything went exactly to plan as I got to enjoy a comfortable 40-hour week, throwing the contract back at them anytime they tried to squeeze even an extra minute out of me. Now for the real kicker. Before the new bill took over, a judge blocked it and shut it down entirely, meaning no more overtime pay for salaried employees. A crippling loss for the workforce, but I at least still got to enjoy my new schedule. Management tried to claw back my hours, but hey, I still have a contract that says I can't. Sorry guys. I was finally pulled into Tia's office, who tried to explain the lack of necessity for the overtime approval now that the overtime bill wouldn't be coming into play. I again reminded her we had a signed contract with no dates and no mention of this being in relation to impending overtime law. Then came my favorite part of the conversation.
So, yes, this is still a valid contract, but I want to be clear that it doesn't override your original employment contract here with us.
You mean the employment contract that states 40 hours a week? And that was that. I was eventually let go a few months later after replying, because I don't, when the CFO mentioned people saying I look like I don't care about my job, but I'd finally built up my skills enough to find a position in my new industry while still enjoying my severance, so I consider it a win. 4 years later, I'm doing work I enjoy from home, hanging out with my dogs with a calmer mind and a fatter wallet, all while they're still stressing over someone else's money. Tables that don't tip, maybe it's not what you think. I read a ton of stories about bad or no tips on here and thought I'd share a story that could bring a little perspective to those that are new to food service. Background: I spent almost 20 years in food service doing everything from washing dishes to service director at a country club. Mostly I waited tables, and it was actually one of my favorite jobs, mostly because of the people. One thing I learned is to not focus on what the table leaves you. If you do your job right, focusing on ensuring your customers have the best dining experience you can, then over time, you will make plenty of money. Now with that out of the way, onto my story. During college, I worked at a place called O'Malley's. It's not open anymore, so I don't have to be worried about getting anybody in trouble. And besides, this isn't that kind of story. No malicious compliance or petty revenge here, just a nice sweet story about how you can never tell about your tables. Anyway, every Sunday these two ladies and a girl would come in and nobody wanted to wait on them because they were super cheap and never tipped. So I volunteered and they became my regulars. I quickly learned that this was a single mom, her daughter, and her mother. They always ordered the same thing, waters with two ladies splitting an entree, and the girl would get something off the kids menu. And no tip. I didn't really care because Sunday lunch was always busy with the after-church crown, and their check was so small, even a 20% tip would have been just a few bucks. Besides, they were super nice, and I understood this was their special time going out. Going out just wasn't something they could do. I did my best to treat them like everyone else, which they appreciated. This went on for over a year. Every Sunday, they would come in after church in their pretty dresses, sit in my section, order the same thing they always did, and not leave me a tip. Until one day, they did. That one day, they came in and ordered iced tea and a soda for the girl. I knew something was up. The two ladies each got their own entree. Nothing elaborate, but still. The girl got a full order of chicken strips. Of course, I asked what the celebration was. I mean, it was obvious this was a special occasion. The mother of the girl smiled at me. I just graduated from nursing school. We wanted to come see you one last time and say thank you for making our Sundays out so special. It meant so much to us to come in here and be treated like everybody else, even though we could never order very much or leave you a tip. We're moving to Dallas this week and we won't be coming back. I got a job at Parkland, a big hospital in Dallas, and we won't be seeing you anymore. I smiled and wished them the best of luck, letting them know I'd missed them. When I picked up their check, they had left me a $50 tip, 150% of their bill. This story took place in the early 80s, so yeah, 3 people could eat lunch for $30. Moral of the story, don't worry about one tip. You never know the customer's true story. My Karen stepdaughter wants to move back in. I'm not having it. My girlfriend, basically wife, we've been together for 11 years, comes to me and says that she wants her daughter to move back in to help her out. She's 21, has 2 kids who are 3 and 1. She's pregnant again and married. She wants to move all of them into the house so they can save to move to a better place because daughter doesn't like where they live. I'm not a kids person. This also involves me packing up my entire man cave of collectibles so they can live in it. I'm the only person working. Oh, and I hate her husband. He's a massive jerk and can't hold jobs longer than a few months while being awful with money. When I voice my concern, my girlfriend tells me all I care about is myself. Never mind, our son doesn't want them to move in either. This is the daughter that has moved out and come back 3 times since she was 16. Each time it's with a guy and more kids, and never ends well. All the guys have been losers, etc. Sometimes I feel like stuff like this will be the end of my relationship. I have a super stressful job. Having a bunch of toddlers and young parents at my home life doesn't sound relaxing. And honestly, yeah, I'm selfish. I'm 41. I thought I was done raising kids. Wow, judgmental much? So what she has a 3 and a 1-year-old at 21? Who are you to judge her lifestyle? Also, judging her partners and their lifestyle choices. You're honestly probably the reason she left home so early. I hope her family finds a better place to live than with a controlling jerk like you. You sound just like my dad, who was a straight-up narcissist. He judged me for having kids as a teen too. So to spite him, I'm now a 30-year-old woman with 8 kids and another on the way. My mom tells me how much he freaks out every time I get pregnant again, and I love it. The best part is how much it infuriates him how I don't have to work at all now, thanks to all the benefits I receive for being a single mom. The old man still works in the same factory he's been at for the last 40 years. I hope you end up just as miserable as he is. My mom wants to invite way too many people to my wedding. From the mom who got a bigger wedding ring because she was jealous of her daughter's engagement ring, I bring you the next installment of Entitled Mothering. My fiance and I have decided to have a small wedding. I say this with quotes because I am Indian and Hindu weddings are usually 300 plus people and last 4 to 5 days. My fiance is American and I am American born and raised. However, I am the first cousin to marry on my mom and dad's side, and it's becoming apparent they don't even want to be in the same building. They're divorced and can't stand each other, but that's another story, I guess. Anyways, when we first got engaged, our limit was 150 people. I was already pushing my fiance because he was dead set on 100, but I knew that was going to be impossible, so I convinced him to raise to 150. Once we told my mom that number, she about spat out her drink. "Is that a hard number?" We tried to say yes. Over the first 4 months of us being engaged, we started talking and mom was holding paying for the catering over our heads.
If I'm paying for the food, then why does it matter how many people I invite?
That's how it started. We fought every time we talked about it, and I told my fiance to please raise again to 175 to allow my mom to invite her people and I could have some peace. Save the dates have come in, and mom and I finally talk about the list. I already had her down for 60. Names including some of her friends and distant family I hadn't seen for years. This already was more than I had wanted, but I thought she would be happy. As we go through the list, she adds a cousin and wife here, and an auntie and husband there. Final number was 125 people, guys. My fiance and I had 110 people, and I start panicking and telling her to stop adding more people. She goes on a full rant about how I'm the selfish one who wanted to have a wedding that wasn't a destination or get eloped, so I didn't have to invite all these people. What? So just because I won't invite an extra 60 family members I don't even know the names of, we didn't deserve a wedding to celebrate with our closest loved ones? The amount of times I've heard, "Can we change the venue?" Or, "Well, it's your fault for choosing too small of a venue." Instead of just respecting our wishes, she's trying to find any loophole to allow more and more people to come or just to insult me until I feel bad enough to let it slide. I also made the mistake of making my sister maid of honor because she basically just backs everything mom says and won't stand up for me at all. Well, I'm not giving her any physical copies, and that's the only way I am hopefully able to control who these get sent to. I don't know. It's been kind of a nightmare with her, and it's really putting a damper on our relationship. Just wanted to vent. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.